Welcome back to the Rodcast, Monday, fun day edition of the Rodcast. Well, fun day if your team won over the weekend. So we'll talk about the teams and the fans who are having a lot of fun. We'll also talk about the teams who are on the losing end of some of those contests over the weekend. We'll discuss, of course, the Longhorns, who are now 7-1, but a bit of a nail biter for Longhorn fans over the weekend against Texas Vanderbilt. We'll discuss the good. All right, we'll talk about the good because it's a 7-1 football team, but there also are some Longhorn fans who are a bit worried about the rest of the stretch of the schedule to come. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about it, the ups and the downs of their win over Vanderbilt on the road. We'll also get to the Cowboys. And man, I don't know. I think we all saw that coming. We all saw it happening. We all knew that was coming. All right. We talked about it last week. The Cowboys, they should have been a team in a position to beat San Fran for the first time in a long time. But I don't know. Nobody really had a lot of confidence in the Cowboys going into that game. And I think now we know why. We'll discuss that too. Texans with a win. They squeak by the Colts. We'll talk about that coming up. We'll also get into some other NFL news, notes, and nuggets. Big college football weekend. And the Aggies playing well. We'll talk about it. Yep. At this point, it's the hype train seems to be for real for the Aggies. So we'll discuss that too. Last team to control their own fate in SEC play right now are the Aggies. Not a lot of people saw that coming. So we'll get into that coming up a little bit later on in the show. So we got a ton to talk about. Hopefully we can get to all of it. Before we do, let's introduce you to the rest of the crew. He's one of the hardest working members of the ARN family. Got a hustler spirit, period. Not sure what he's paid, but pretty damn sure the man is underpaid. Ain't no 401k for this hustler, and he's a hustle man of many talents. It's our friend, co-host, and neighbor. It is Patrick Davis, y'all. What's going on, Patrick? How you doing, brother?
Oh, good to be back on a Monday morning. It was a good weekend there.
Great
A
weekend.
little bit more stressful than it needed to be at points.
Hey, that's okay.
That was a little bit
That's
more
all right.
stressful, but it was good enough. So we'll take it on a Monday. Got a little bit of some chores done. Got some football watching in. Got some basketball watching in.
That's right. Yeah, basketball season. You were busy then. That's right.
And then even watched a little bit of the World Series, even though I hate both those teams.
Oh yeah.
And then
hate those teams.
And then you couldn't avoid the highlights after Friday night. They're like, it's historic, and you're like, yeah. I don't care.
That's like great.
I want to celebrate either one of these people.
It's historic.
Yeah, I know it is.
Yeah, I like that. There you go.
That was after Friday night of the World Series. But no, it was a good weekend overall. And ready to kick it off on a Monday. It's always nice to kick it off on a Monday when you're coming after a win versus like last week. Not as much fun to come in on that. But
exactly. Both of our teams basically had very 3-point wins. The Texans pulled out a 23-20 win over the Colts. A lot of people thought that should have been a win that they obviously a game they won by a larger margin. And of course, the Longhorns who were favored by, I believe it was 17, something like that. By the time they kicked off that game, we'll talk about it. But Vanderbilt, I think Vanderbilt actually is a good team. I mean, they were ranked top 25, so of course they're a good team. And I think they're going to pull off another upset at one point this year. The truth is, Texas once again was their own worst enemy. The self-inflicted wounds, and that really is the most troubling thing for Longhorn fans watching. You want to celebrate your team winning, and Longhorn fans, you should enjoy it. Your team's really good. First time they've been this good in a long, long time. But the Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Serena Williams size, Cardi B size, Megan Thee Stallion size, but is yes. If they continue to play this way, there is a higher likelihood that somebody is going to give them another L. But which they still could be fine. They can still make the playoffs, by the way. But they just can't. They can't have 3 losses. They have 3 losses. They're not going to make the playoffs. 2 losses, you can still make the playoffs. 10-2 Texas makes the playoffs, guys. No matter if they're in the SEC title game or not. But that's not what we're discussing. We're discussing if they play to this, they don't play to a standard. They play this way. There's a good chance that not only are these some fourth quarter games, but at one point they'll slip up and take another loss to a team.
No, and I know that there's a lot of concern from people that the basic concern is that it doesn't even matter. We can go win the rest of the season. The way they're playing right now, it's a loss in the first. They're going to lose in the playoffs. They can't. They're not the standard to win it all. And so if you're not there, then that's why we're going to be worried about it. I get that complaint. I get it.
If you're not first, you're last.
Yes, which again,
the Longhorns got the Ricky Bobby.
The moral of that movie was that's not correct.
But doesn't it feel like that though? Like,
it does. I get it, but It's not the moral of the movie.
A lot of politicians using that these days. I'm like,
they're trying. I know people keep saying it. And you're like, oh, guys, watch the movie. They're all miserable.
Oh. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, it's good. No, so I get that, and we'll go into all of that. You see the good things, but yeah, there's a certain point of it feels like, when you're trying to clean your house, and so you clean one room, and then you walk into the next room to clean that room, and when you move some stuff, you move it into the room you just cleaned, and then you walk back in the room like, well, now this room's cluttered.
Some spring cleaning,
like you're springing, but you're just kind of moving a mess around a little bit.
Yeah,
and you're just like, well, sometimes it's just hard to keep everything clean at the same time. And
there's some of that going on with the Longhorns right now. On offense, by the way, offense and special teams. I would say 2 of the 3 phases right now seem to be, I would say struggling at times, at the most inopportune times. But we'll get into it.
The other part is if you watch enough college football, that is extremely common in Texas still in a much
actually higher, the team that is the most buttoned up, consistent, disciplined team. That is the exception these days, not the rule. I don't really know who that team is. I mean, you can say it's Oregon, you can say it's Ohio State, but every team has shown flaws. There is no perfect team.
If you watch that Ohio State Nebraska game, any of that game,
exactly.
It wasn't like Ohio State was playing to a standard against Nebraska either.
Yes, there is a very much survive and advance starting feel. That is, maybe it's because the playoff is here, and that's what we realize. But that theme is starting to, I think, materialize in college football a lot. Like, hey man, just survive and advance, and that's what you got to do in the playoffs too. Don't you find a way? Just win, baby.
Yeah.
Al Davis,
so we'll get into all that, but first, I'll introduce you to my co-host. He's a proud alumni of DBU. He's got more papers than Dunder Mifflin and watches more film than Fitzsiskell and Ebert. He is a new Rod, father of Austin Sports Radio, Mr. Rod Babers.
Thank you for the intro, brother. I did find a trend that is alarming, as I always do. So we'll get into that too, and why I think that the offense is struggling in some ways in the last, obviously in SEC play here in the last 3 weeks. I'll get into that too coming up. If we don't get into it next, this segment, we'll dive into it when we go behind the burn orange curtain. Actually, we'll hear from Sark when we go behind the burn orange curtain and in the post game, and then maybe in Rod's rant, we'll get to that theory. But we'll talk about it. I mean, we're gonna hit this thing from every different angle. But I think we'll start off giving props though, because I think the defense deserves it, and I think some elements of the offense too were really good in that game. Hell, I know some people are being hard on Quinn. I thought it was a good performance, good bounce back performance by Quinn, but we'll talk about that too. All right, so let's not waste any time. Let's get in the Horn headlines, and we'll come back and break down the game and get Patrick's thoughts about it as well. But first, let's get updated, let's get educated, let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Spurs got a 109-106 win over the Rockets on Saturday. Victor Wembanyama had 29 points and held Alperen Sengun to only 6 points for the Rockets. The Mavericks dropped the game to the Suns, 114-102. Luka Doncic still had 40 points in the loss, but a 31-point night for Kevin Durant got Phoenix the win. Tonight, the Rockets and Spurs face off again, and the Mavs take on the Jazz. In the World Series, the Dodgers took a 2-0 series lead with a late heroics on Friday with a Freddie Freeman walk-off grand slam on Friday, and then a solid 4-2 win on Saturday. The series now shifts to New York with the Yankees hoping to get back into it with Clark Schmidt on the mound going against Walker Buehler. In college football, Texas picked up a 27-24 win over Vanderbilt on the road, holding on after an underwhelming second-half performance. Ohio State survived a scare against Nebraska, winning 21-17, while Oregon maintained their number one ranking with a dominant 38-9 win over Illinois, and Texas A&M rode a big second half to a 38-23 win over LSU to remain the only unbeaten team in SEC play. Texas falls to number 6 in the latest AP poll. And in the NFL, the Texans picked up a big division win over the Colts after almost giving the game away on a late fumble. Joe Mixon ran for 102 yards in the game, but the Texans will wait to hear about the status of Stephon Diggs after exiting the game after a non-contact injury. And the Cowboys fell just short to the 49ers 30-24 after fighting back in the fourth quarter. Tonight, the Giants take on the Steelers on Monday Night Football, and that is your Horn headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn headlines. We will get into the Cowboys. We'll get into the NFL next hour. But guys, we saw that coming. I mean, I went through the injuries last week and told you I still can't pick the Cowboys And I asked you, Patrick. I was like, so you pick it. We went through all the advantages. Like
No.
Cowboys had the advantages. I will say Debo playing was big for them. Debo playing because we didn't know if he was going to play, but he did play. But as banged up and as lowly as we've seen the Shanahan's San Francisco 49ers, and I said, I just think they're gonna get out coached at one
And
point.
they were,
They'll
but
get out coached.
man, that
And
second
they got
half,
out coached.
half
Yeah.
was the most glaring reasons why both coaches have issues. Was Mike McCarthy making horrible second half adjustments and just getting destroyed, him, Mike Zimmer, and just that team in the locker room not coming out right in the second half. And then Kyle Shanahan once again having a fourth quarter where he just pulls up the brakes a little too soon and everything starts to fall apart really quickly.
I mean, they couldn't stop CD at the end. It was like, it's CD Lamb. He's the guy. What are you doing? It should be somebody else. How do you not gonna?
How do you let him be 20 yards wide open? Two times.
They lost him. They lost him multiple times. I'm like, you lost CD Lamb?
They stooged the play and ran into each other.
Yeah, when he ran the deep route, I'm like, I really, I was like, you're right. I don't know. The defense for the 49ers it's leaky to say the least.
But you saw that and you're going like, man, that's the 49ers in big games. They've
done that multiple times this year. And we've talked about in the Super Bowls with the double-digit leads. I don't know. Yeah, that was strange. And you got a good defense. Like to say, but it's not like they have a bad defense. The defense is good.
We've seen that, but it ended up that once they finally put the screws back in, they were ready to go. But man, the fact they marched down the field twice with ease, and it was just you start to pull back up a little bit and just we'll allow some things underneath. And you go, okay, well now they're going to hit a rhythm, and now they can get going. You gotta be able to just push it down on them. You were able to do it the entire game until then. But then coming out of the half, the fact that the Cowboys just
the 49ers, that was a culture win for them. They just so that's how they've been there before. They flipped the switch. We talk about flipping the switch all the time, the championship switch. Now they haven't won a championship, but you know what I mean? This is a team that's competed for multiple championships while they've been there. They got guys who've been they literally flipped the switch on them at halftime. Because the Cowboys were in control of that game for the first half. Yeah. They flipped the switch on them. And we talk about it all the time. They got it. I mean, Georgia did it versus Texas. Flip the switch on them. Like, oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. You that's a championship level. Okay. We didn't understand what a championship level of play was. That's it. All right. That's okay. We know what we got to get to. For the Cowboys, I don't know if they can get there. No. Like, I don't know if that's in the Cowboys. That's the point. And I said that last week. I don't know if that's in them. This would be an opportunity for them to show that. And they didn't show it.
No,
so
and
we'll get to it. We'll break it down. We'll break it down because I want to get into the Longhorn, obviously, and their win over Vanderbilt. So let's talk about it. Okay, let me start with the good because I know a lot of Longhorn fans want to reflect on the bad. We like to cry from a yacht, and that's good. We'll do some whining from the yacht. But let's start off with the good because first of all, the Texas defense is. Right now, I think they're second in scoring defense, first in total defense, third in pass defense. So you're still talking about one of the better defenses. But even the 24 points, I think you got to look at it and closely examine it, just like you did the 30 points that Georgia scored versus the Texas defense. And you look at it, and they had, once again, it was just one drive that was over 30, one scoring drive that was over 38 yards.
Yep.
That was it. So in the last two games against Georgia, yes, you've allowed, 54 points in the last two games. So that's that you say, oh man, that's a good amount of points. It is a good amount of points. But you look at the scoring drive, I believe there have been 10 scoring drives allowed by the Texas defense in that time span. Only 2 of those are over 38 yards. 2 scoring drives over 30 yards. That was a 75-yarder and an 89-yard both touchdown drives. But the average distance, shout out to my man CJ Vogel who had threw this one out. The average distance of 38.5 yards needed for an opponent to put points on the board. That's that we'll get into why that's bad because that is reflective of the lack of complementary football, but also shows you, man, how stingy that this defense has been, and they haven't been getting a lot of help. They haven't been getting a lot of help from special teams. Haven't been getting a lot of help from the offense. How about this from opponents? Shout out to Nash because at Nash Talks Texas threw this out there. 7 of the 19 scoring drive for that Texas defense has allowed has started in Texas territory. Only 6 scores allowed on drives traveled more than 60 yards We just told you in the last 2 games, you got 2 of those. And drives, you go look at it overall. I mean, this is drives of 60 yards or less, scoring drives of 60 yards or less. You got 13 of those scoring drives of 60 yards or less, which means this is bad field. This is favorable field position for the opposing team. If this defense actually got the support of complementary football, like their offense not giving teams short field position. Remember we talked about turnovers in the first quarter? Another turnover in the first quarter. I believe that's now every SEC game.
Yeah.
You've had a turnover in the first quarter. And then you had the punt at the end of the first half that ended up being like a 23-yard punt.
Yeah.
And that's when they got the easy field goal. They were in easy field goal range there. I mean, the defense has been very stingy, guys. They're actually been better than the box score and the score indicate. And by the way, the box score it still says they're one of the better defenses in college football. But if you watch them, you see how stingy they are. Even Diego Pavia said it's the best defensive line that they faced. And he said that Michael Taft, he said he was surprised that he was a walk-on. He said, when they told me he was a walk-on, I couldn't believe that guy was a walk-on. They said,
I don't think many people
former.
Yeah, I don't think many people could believe that with how he's been playing this year.
He had the best. I don't think I've ever seen him play. Everybody knows how I feel about the white safeties, all right, and the white DBs. By the way, I like them. In case somebody just tuned in, I was like, how does he feel about them? Rodney doesn't like the white DB. No, I like
a history
them.
about this.
Yeah, there's a history here, but I like them. All right, so they'll be like, Robbie's racist. No. He can't be racist if I like the race.
He just read the NFL of them.
Yeah, well, it wasn't me. There was the Giants who thought, Robbie was worthy of that. It turns out, nope, they probably should have just stuck with the white corner. He was worth it. But anyway, but Michael Taft, I think he has the best game I've ever seen him play. I don't think I've ever seen him play a better game. Interception. He had a forced fumble. He had a PBU. He had that PBU in the end zone, by the way. That was like in the end zone where he broke up that pass. 3 defensive stops. You can argue he was the best defensive player on the field.
Oh yeah,
on either side, you can make that. You can make that claim.
And I'll get Jelani McDonald stepped up in the game.
Looked great.
And I mean that safety room, understanding where they were at and that they really could not let anything slip because it's them. You don't really have a lot of help. Those 2 guys stepped up immensely in that game.
He really did. That Jelani McDonald, you're right. Honestly, I seen him. He ran the alley, which is kind of your playing to run from depth. All right. He did it as well as any safety. Derek Williams was probably the best at it, and he did as well as any safety I've seen at Texas in the last couple of years. I mean, he did a great job coming down run alley against a team that's had some really innovative, unconventional run concepts. He had 7 tackles, 0 missed tackles. I mean, that was a great first start for Jelani McDonald, essentially their 3rd string safety. When you look at Makuba and Derek Williams and Taft, they believe they kind of rotate those 3 guys as starters. Now you got to throw him in the mix as one of those guys too. Yeah. And we saw Kobe Black thrown out there. Just random. I mean, he came out there and made a play, and they put him out there. I don't think anything was wrong with Jahdae Barron or Gavin Holmes. They just put him out there to give him some reps, and he ended up making a play. You're going to see more of Kobe Black. I wonder if they just wanted a more physical presence at corner instead of a Gavin Holmes that usually rotate in there. Obviously, Jahdae Barron is he's the best corner in the country right now. I mean, that's how he's playing that well. Pro Football Focus gave out their mid-season awards, and they gave him the Thorpe for their mid-season awards. So he is playing like the best cornerback in the country, but the secondary they played really well. I think that might have been the best game from the safeties.
No, I mean
all season long, and they played really good all season. I'm saying heaven, but I don't know if the safeties have played better than Taft and Jelani McDonald.
Manny Muhammad's got to go back with that game tape and take it around and be like, I know there was 2 penalties technically called on me. One was on Taft, not me. And the other one was a bad call.
Yeah, okay. It was. I don't like the call because the receiver grabbed him.
The receiver kept him from turning around.
The receiver grabbed him and kept him from being able to identify the football. And
because if he turns around, it's not a penalty.
It is not. If he's playing the football, it's not a penalty. But Man, give the receiver some credit. That was savvy. That was
It
a savvy
It
move.
was.
It was savvy because the receiver threw the flag was on the other side of him too. So I don't even know if they were like, "Hey, the receiver, we already know where the official is." So the official that threw the flag, he was on the backside, so he really couldn't see the grab either.
Oh no, it was a savvy
That
play.
was a
I don't want
savvy.
to take it
If
away
I'm
from the receiver.
Sarkin, I steal that play. I'm like, man, let's steal that. And come on, that's a quick grab. That's a beautiful. It really was. I think I was like, oh, I haven't really seen that because he wasn't going to get open because he was smothered. Like he really was. Like Malik Muhammad had great position. All he had to do was turn and then play the ball, and it probably would have been either a PBU or a pick or something like that.
That was the clever play that the 49ers ran last night to get it, to hold on to the DB and be like, no, you're not letting me outside. You're leading me right into this other guy. I don't have a choice but to set a pick.
Yes, exactly. Oh, and then he goes down like, oh, I'm hurt too. It hurt me. I didn't want to do that. I wouldn't have done that to myself.
I get it was a savvy play, but if you're a man, you're like, I was trying to turn around. Like and
it was a fourth down too. So it's like that was your strategy was just to throw a fade. By the way, the fade statistically, analytically, guys, it is one of the least effective, most low efficiency plays in football. It is. It's just it is rare unless you got a Calvin Johnson out there or somebody like that.
Yeah,
it's rarely completed, and that guy ain't that. So I think that was the strategy. I think it was like, guys, we know where the official's going to be, and all you got to do, and we know how this DB plays. The fades. We know how he plays you. He's going to guard. He's going to face guard you until last second, turn around, and right before he turns around, just snag him. Just snag him.
And
keep him from going. Oh man! And then he'll look, and then you can fall back. Oh, it was. I gotta tell you, that's just damn good coaching, guys. That's a damn good. That's just damn good coaching. It really was. Like I'm to give them credit. They're on scholarship too. That was a good move. But you're right. That was a BS call. They had some BS calls, but let's talk about the calls, and they'll lead us to the offense. Because Texas was their own worst enemy. You got 10 penalties. That would make 18 penalties in the last 2 games. 18 penalties in the last 2 games. That's I don't know. That is characteristic of an undisciplined football team. Right? That's I said not all of them. The Gunnar Helm holding, terrible call.
Yep.
Gunnar Helm holding was a terrible call. I still looked at the call 4-5 times.
He has a 50-50 holding call on every single play, and then some of them are just awful, and some of them are like, okay, your hand's got on the outside, I get it. But he gets one a game now.
I don't know, and I don't know what to do about the holding calls. It's obvious in the SEC. They call holding differently. They interpret the rule differently. So Texas either needs to put together. They got enough of a sample size now. Put together a reel of tape for all the guys. I say tape because I'm an old man. But video of them of all the SEC games, and like, all right, this is what they say is holding. This is what they think is legal. And because it ain't about, is that holding? Is that, man? You can argue that's holding on every play. All right. Yep. It depends on how you want to interpret, holding as an official. But they need to put together so they can find out exactly how the officials are calling holding or whatever it is. Also, they need to have officials at practice. Bring them out. I know you can't have obviously Big 12 officials or SEC officials. Bring out the ones you can. They allow you to do it because Mac used to do it. Bring out the ones you can and start officiating practice. Start officiating the team drill, start officiating your 7-on-7. It's like, all right, this is, I probably maybe not 7-on-7. You don't need that, but whatever your issue is, if it's holding, if it's pass interference, whatever it is, bring in officials and have them call it at practice so the guys get used to it, and have them call it like the SEC officials would call it. Yeah. Not how they interpret it. Have them interpret it the way they do. Those are a couple of things. I mean, I'm not a coach, but I remember when we had penalty issues, Mac would bring out officials at practice, and Mac would put together, reels of video. Like, all right, this is what they're called. They let this go. They didn't let this go. You let this go. They didn't let this go. Get in your head. All right. So you need to adapt your strategy. You need to adapt your technique and your fundamentals. They're letting you play like this. And then during the game, you also, hey, man, you have to be aware. If they're going to let you play during the game, then they let you play. But if they're calling it tight, you got to still adjust the way you play. So whatever it is, that's, I think that's up to the coaches. But yeah, they got to figure out the penalty. 18 penalties in the last 2 games.
No,
that's bad.
No, it is. And it's, and then once you get this reputation, the reputation is now there. Every coach is going to come out before the game, and every coach is going to walk up to every ref before the game and be like, man, you got to watch them. They've been getting called. Like, they're holding on every play. You got to watch them. You better watch. Like, they hold. Everybody knows Texas holds. Come on, man. You know that. You see it. And you're like, yeah, but everybody holds.
Everybody else. Everybody. Right.
And you have to watch. One of the big ones is guys falling down. They're getting calls at least one a game where somebody just falls over in front of them and they give them a hold for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like,
he just got whipped, and then that's a hold. It's like, no, I whipped him.
Yeah, I whipped him. We bumped. He lost his balance and fell forward. And you think I pulled him down and tackled him? I didn't. Mm-hmm. And so they're calling that one. You have to watch out for that one. And if you're on defense and beat, follow or forward. You get a call. They're calling it that way in the SEC. So
that was exactly. You need to adapt to. I think Texas it's a very different culture of officiating, obviously, than the Big 12, and I think that's what they got to adapt to. I think Sark will get that remedy. He'll get that rectified. Yes. I do believe that. That's because it's a glaring issue now. That's because hurting drives. It's killing some drives.
Actually. It's a huge drive killer.
It's killing some of your drives. It really is. Okay, let's talk about Quinn because I know you guys. We'll get to Quinn and then we'll get to the offensive line. I want to start with some of the good. By the way, good. Let's start with Quinn because Quinn, I think, was part of the good. Even though I guess we'll do Quinn good and bad. He'll be in the good and the bad.
Yes,
because I think a lot of Longhorn fans want to put it in the bad. But listen, guys, I said this last week. I said Sark is going to prioritize getting Quinn in a groove and getting him in a rhythm. All right, and making sure that he is playing in a confident way, right? That he's a confident quarterback, and that's what the whole entire game plan is going to be based on. And it was. So your first 14 plays basically were either a handoff, just a rushing attempt, or it was a throw within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, which is basically a long handoff or an extension of running. It was just a check down. It was a design check down. They were all schemed open, wide window, first read, kind of premeditated throws, right? They were all kind of just premeditated check downs, detached screens on the outside. They didn't throw their first pass that was longer than 5 yards from the line of scrimmage until that Amari Nyblack. What? Where it happened? Where did he come from? I didn't look up the roster. I was like, who is that? That's Amari Nyblack.
Yeah, no, I know. Wait, when they said his name the first time, what? Huh?
It was like, what? Hold up, what? Amari Nyblack. I didn't know who he was. It had been so long. I was like, who is that? I was like, what receiver? Oh, that's right. But he looked great, and it was a great play. And by the way, that play, there was a first throw past 5 yards. Guys, it was max protection. They left in the running back and the tight end. It was a 7-man protection, which means they only had 2 guys that were going vertical on routes. It was Ryan Wingo and Amari Nyblack, and they used Silas Bolden. He was a jet motion guy. He was the check down. So that was a scheme throw. Like, hey, Quinn, you're reading these 2 guys. One clears the safety, he's open, he's your guy. If the other guy clears the safety, he's open, he's your guy. We're not asking you to do any full field read progressions. None of that. No, you don't need to go through it. He didn't really go through any of those like full field read progressions early either. Everything was quick, half field, boom, boom. You know exactly where you're going with the football. And then he got into the rhythm even after the pick. I get it. We talk about the tip passes, but even after he got into 17 passes in a row. I believe that is maybe the definition of getting your quarterback in a rhythm.
Yeah.
Hitting 17 back. I don't give a damn. There's behind the line of scrimmage within 5 yards. That's getting your quarterback in a rhythm. Now, he only had 9 passes. My notes here. 9 pass attempts past 10 yards. This is what Longhorn fans may have a problem with the offense. Like, that makes you really predictable. Yep, he only had 9. Basically, set almost 80% of his passing yards were yak yards.
Mm-hmm.
That tracks in the lines, right? He's like, oh, yeah, that's tracks. I mean, matter of fact, you can think he was 4 of 9 on passes past 10 yards. Right now, I bet Longhorn fans, you can recollect them. You can remember them all. It was obviously the DeAndre Moore touchdown, the deep one. It was remember the Gunnar Helm that was like a third down. They blitzed him and right over the middle. He's just a beautiful throw by Quinn in a really small window. That was one of them. I mean, because it didn't happen very often. I mean, Amari Nyblack, we talked about that one. That was West 3. And I think that was a one of Ryan Wingo late, like a 2nd and 23 or something like that. Oh, no, Silas Bolden. It was Silas Bolden one. Remember the Silas Bolden, 3rd and 20. It was a 3rd and 20. Remember that 3rd and 20? Yep. And he commits. Matter of fact, it might have been the best play by Quinn all night. That 3rd and 20 was magnificent. I mean, that was Michigan Quinn. He was maneuvering in the pocket on the move, and then boom, avoided the pressure, got the ball out to Silas Bolden's small window. That was a beautiful play. So I thought Quinn played well, other than the way he handled pressure. And guys, I told y'all guys this in the offseason. Quinn didn't. That's what the scouts were worried about, right? Like, we don't know how he handles pressure. He handled it well in 2022, not so well in 2023. Want to see how he handles it in 2024. And it's still a mixed bag. Against Michigan, he had a higher grade by Pro Football Focus under pressure than he had with a clean pocket. And then we see him last week under pressure, and he folds like a cheap suit. They had to bench him because he was just so discombobulated under pressure.
Yeah.
And then in this game, some plays you saw him just like the 3rd and 20 under pressure. It was amazing. And then there were some plays where, well, you get tip pass, you get sacked under pressure. It's every quarterback has issues dealing with pressure. For Quinn, it's just they figure, and this is what Vanderbilt figured out. That's why they started blitzing. His highest blitz rate he's faced all season long. And they as the game went on, they blitzed more because they figured out what we've known all along. Quinn doesn't handle pressure very well, but no quarterback does. But you have to get to the point where you can reduce the risk as a quarterback in your play when you're dealing with pressure. And you can, you know what I mean, as a, because you're going to, like I said, you're going to deal with regression, or you're going to deal with drop in your production as a quarterback when you're under pressure. But you need to be able to mitigate the damage. And now with Quinn, it becomes a disastrous play.
Yes.
Right. And like I said, he was, they blitzed him on all those plays, right? The worst plays defensively, or sorry, offensively for Texas, but the best plays defensively for Vanderbilt, the 4 sacks and the 2 tip interceptions. 5 of the 6 were blitzes. They just blitzed them. It was like, we're going to roll the dice and let's see whether let the chips fall there. Remember what I told you about the chaos theory of football on defense? We just got to disrupt. And if we disrupt enough, the odds will eventually they'll fall in favor of the defense, because offense is about precision. It's about execution. It's about, it's about timing. It's about, accuracy, all these things that have to align for offense to work correctly and execute. For defense, I just need the ball to fall my way. Really. I just need you to screw up.
Yeah.
I just need you to mess up, and I need to facilitate that. And what blitzing facilitates that. It screws up the O-line, that forces the quarterback to think quickly, and sometimes he may panic, and you're trying to produce panic.
Yeah.
And create chaos. And that's what they did, and it worked.
No, and I think for Quinn, it's the pressure is you have to expect the unexpected, which is he sees blitzes, and you'll see the line and try to protect where a blitz was shown, and they send it from another angle. Mm-hmm. And that guy comes on just unprotected, just comes right at him. And you go, it's not fully his fault, but he's acting as if, well, no, we saw it. That middle linebacker's coming right at me. Mm-hmm. And then the outside linebacker comes at him. And now all of a sudden, there's no one. The running back is on the other side of the field. Can't come over and chip him and give Quinn another second or two. You can't do anything. And that's when Quinn sees the guy coming unprotected and doesn't run, doesn't do anything. He just goes, crap.
Yeah. And sometimes you got to be happy he ate it and just take the L.
Yeah. Take the and there's just been too many times of that where they show one thing, they just misdiagnose it at the beginning because it's a good defensive scheme. Mm-hmm. And then those are the ones that you just go, but it's happening too much that you can't just say, oh, well, 1 or 2 times a game. You're like, they got you 4 or 5 times in the game and you took 4 sacks in it.
Yeah.
Where it was just somebody coming off that you weren't, and that's when we start talking about Georgia. He goes, they're not all Quinn's fault. And you go, they're not. But at a certain point, if he is the CEO of the offense, then he has to make those quick decisions and not take losses. The same way you can't have an offensive lineman get a holding call. You can't you can't move backwards, because once you start moving backwards, this offense kind of falls apart, because it is all about rhythm. It is all about staying in time, and you're not breaking off a ton of 20, 30-yard plays. So once you get behind, you can't keep running 4 or 5-yard calls, because then it's a punt. Yep.
And to your point about that it's not necessarily Quinn's fault, but it's his responsibility. Yes. Right? Like, hey man, I know, free rusher or whatever it is, that you got to deal with either mitigating the damage or find a way to make a play. The cornerback blitz. There were some lessons. I know we're up against, so we'll go to break here. There are some lessons that Vanderbilt clearly learned from the Georgia game plan. This is what I love about football. That's why it's a copycat game, right? They're just going to watch the Georgia film and go, well, that worked for Georgia. And then you hear what Sark said. Sark said that they didn't block the cornerback blitz strip sack. Wasn't Quinn's fault. The O-line just didn't block it. It's like, oh, right, they didn't block it. All right, you know what? We should try to run it. See if it works for us. Okay, coach, let's run it for us. They put it down on the chart. They practice it all week, and they run the quarterback blitz, and it works for them. And they go, you know what? That worked out pretty well. We got a sack out of that corner blitz. We should run it more. Let's see if we run it. And then they run it again, and it leads to another sack. And they run it again, and it leads to a tip pass interception. They go, all right, I think we found something with the quarterback blitz, guys. Let's go. And that's football. If you don't fix the problem, you will continue to see the problem. Trust me, LSU, they gonna see a lot of zone read. Teams gonna try to run the zone read on it because A&M, they couldn't stop it. It's like, well, you can't stop it. Well, you're gonna see it again. That's the reality of it. Happens with the Cowboys. Cowboys can't stop the run. Well, everybody's gonna run on you. That's football in a nutshell. So you will see the cornerback blitz again. You're gonna see the cornerback blitz, slot cornerback blitz, pound your cornerback blitz. You're a fool if you don't run it against Texas, because right now it's working pretty damn well. And Georgia ran it just a couple of times, broke tendency for them, and then Vanderbilt jumped on it. The A-gap blitz, the blitz that's right up the A-gap. It's not the double barrel A-gap blitz that we've seen Georgia running, but a guy running through the A-gap. Yep. One of your sacks, A-gap blitz. One of your tip pass interceptions, A-gap blitz. They figured it out. They watched some of the Washington film. All right, we know it's a quick game, so get your hands up. Got tipped them passes. Yeah, the call's coming out quick. 2.1 seconds. Ball's coming out quick. So you ain't going to get there to get home, but if you ain't get there, he's got a sidearm release, so get your hands up. Clog those passing windows. Worked. I mean, that's all football is in a nutshell. It's a game. It's a simple game that's complicated by simple men. Don't overcomplicate it. It worked against them. Let's see if it works for us.
Yep.
Boom.
That's it. Hey, but I will.
And it did.
I will give Quinn one thing. He overthrew a pass this week. Threw a ball.
He
deep
did. He overthrew a
downfield,
deep one.
and when he did it, I know it's a miss, and it wasn't a great throw, but you threw one downfield. I'm happy to see it.
Yeah, at least now it's on film.
I know you can throw it. I know it's not the oblique holding you back from putting it downfield.
Yeah.
So okay.
He did look better on some of the deep balls. I thought Quinn played well, other than the tip passes and how he handled pressure. But guys, no quarterback handles pressure well.
Nope.
None of them. Patrick Mahomes does maybe, but that's why he is who he is. All right, we come back. Even Brady. Remember Brady under pressure? All right, Superman and Clark Kent. All right, we come back. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian about the win Texas had over Vanderbilt, and we'll also come back and discuss more of what we thought about the Longhorns and their win over the top 25 ranked Vanderbilt Commodores. Let's not forget that right here on the Horn. I'm Rod Davis, with Lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis here with Patrick Davis, coming back to you right here on the Horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into some of these Steve Sarkisian sound. We'll get into a little bit here, but still continue to review what we saw this weekend between Texas and Vanderbilt. All right, first, I want to get Sark's thoughts here about the tip passes and the sacks. That's the biggest issue for Longhorn fans, right? Those 6 plays kept you from blowing out Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
I mean, you were really that and the penalties.
Yep.
So maybe it's 3 things: tip passes, sacks, and penalties kept you from blowing out Vanderbilt. You otherwise, man, you would have covered that spread and a whole lot more. I mean, and it was close to happening. Guys, do you realize how close you were? I talk about the Sark run, the Sark run that always happens, right? Where it's like the Golden State Warriors. You look up at one point, it was a close game, and then, oh man, 6-7 minutes later, you look up and Texas is up by 21 points. What happened? And it's usually, sparked by the offense, and then, the defense complements it. But lately we've seen the defense. Remember, I talked about this against Oklahoma. That it was the defense that sparked the run against Oklahoma, and it led to the separation. Then the offense actually ended up supporting the defensive kind of sparked run. They had a chance. In the second quarter, Texas is really close to blowing out Vanderbilt. They had that DeAndre Moore touchdown. That was a third drive, right? That DeAndre, and they're rolling. Remember that third drive? That's what the first time they throw past 5 yards to Amari Knobloch. So they're rolling. Boom. They're feeling good. They're still on the script, and it's looking good. And then the defense gets an interception on the next drive. All right. And you're like, okay, defense gets an interception. Texas just scored a touchdown. And then that was that drive, man, that the offensive line they really did. They just killed it because Cam Williams had that. They had a big run. Remember the big run? I think it was like it was explosive. It was an explosive run. And then Cam Williams gets the unnecessary, unsportsmanlike conduct.
Yep.
Right on that. And then they put Texas behind the chains. And then Texas actually battles back. And they're still end up driving. They end up overcoming that penalty and they're still driving down the field. And then you get the Kelvin Banks penalty. Kelvin Banks is a holding penalty on the drive. And then that was too much for him to overcome. And essentially that's what killed it. That just killed that drive. Yeah, because they ended up getting, after that unsportsmanlike conduct, it was, 1st and 10. And then that made it 2nd and 16. But then Jaden Blue picked up 16 yards. Remember on that dump off play, and that got you right back in it. And then you had a 4-yard pass to Gunnar Helm, and then you 2nd and 6, and then you put a holding on Kelvin Banks, and that made it 2nd and 12. Jaden Blue ran there for like 3 yards, and then ultimately 3rd and long, and then you get sacked on 3rd and long. So the offensive line that was just a bad drive for them, and that was your 4th drive of the game, and then your defense had a 3 and out. Your defense forced a 3 and out right after that, got you the ball right back, and then you went and scored a touchdown, and that was your DeAndre Moore 25-yard touchdown, and then it's 21-7, and you're thinking, all right, it's time. The run is happening.
Yeah,
because your defense forces a fumble. We're on the next drive. Your defense is giving you this is it. Your defense is giving you the opportunity to blow them out. They force a fumble, and you get the ball back after that. Remember, they were on. It was like a 9-play drive they were on. That Vanderbilt was on, and then you force force that fumble, and then it's like I think it was like a minute and a half, maybe 90 seconds left in the half, and then you get the ball back, and it's a chance you could go down at least get in field goal range, and you don't. You 3 and out. But the punt was so bad.
Yeah.
It was a 23-yard punt. And it was so bad that it ended up where they got in field goal range as soon as they got the football. I mean, they got it at the 35. They got the ball at 35 because of a 23-yard punt. So the lack of complementary football is what kept you from blowing them out.
Yeah.
If offense doesn't have that offensive line, that 4th drive where the offensive line just kills you with a sack and then 2 penalties on that drive, I believe you go down and at least get you a field goal on that drive. And if you don't have, you probably should have scored at least a field goal when your defense got you the ball back on the forced fumble, but no, it was a 3 and out. But then your punt was so damn bad, you basically gave them 3 points. So that was in between being a 6 or it would have been a 10-point swing there, and you go into half, and it's 21-10 when it should have been like 27-7, or even like or like 31-7.
Yeah,
or something like that. And then remember, after half, you force a 3 and out. They get the ball. You force a 3 and out right after half, and then you score a field goal. So think about where the game would be then. If it was 27-7, it'd have been 30-7 at that point. Whole different game.
Yeah.
Whole different game. And it's like, well, or even 31-7. Like you were close to being able to blow them out, and then you missed your opportunity. And then the second half, Texas just they never had that chance again because Vanderbilt got a little bit momentum, and then the offense wasn't clicking as well, as it was in the first half. So you missed your chance for the Sark run. It was close, but the defense was doing everything it could. It was getting you the ball. The defense was getting you the ball back, like quick 3 and outs, forced fumble, interception, and then I think ultimately Texas just couldn't take advantage of it. That's why they missed the Sark run. All right, let's hear from Sark, though. Let's hear from Sark about the tip passes, because these are tip passes and the sacks. And the question is, how much of this is on Quinn? All right, is this a lot of this Quinn's responsibility? The tip pass to end up being interceptions and the sacks. Here's what Sark had to say.
You know, the first one was an RPO, and I couldn't even really see. It was a blitzing linebacker, I think, that kind of got his hand up. I mean, it's not his fault. It's not anybody's fault. Sometimes that just happens. You know, balls get tipped. The second one, again, was unfortunate. You know, I think that, you know, you never try to throw over people over the middle, but when balls get tipped at the line of scrimmage, you naturally have to throw over people. But I don't fault him for those things. It's really just unfortunate because I thought he played a really good football game tonight and made some really critical throws on third downs for explosive plays. I thought he took advantage throws when he had him on the perimeter, when he had them. Used his legs a couple times effectively. I thought he stepped up beautifully. Had a great one on a third and long conversion to Silas Bolden working up in the pocket. So I know, hey, it's been a long week for him too. And so I was proud of him in the way that he came and attacked this game tonight. And again, I thought he played really well. Had some, like I said, just kind of bad luck with the tips.
In the sacks.
You know, I got to look at that too. One of them, I felt like we should have been much better for sure. There was another one where we have a miscommunication and the running back doesn't block his man. And that's a little concerning because that's 2 weeks in a row now on third down that's occurred. So again, everybody takes his, you know, has a part in all that. Us as coaches do too. And we have to improve that.
Yeah, I think pass protection overall is an issue now. And that is all inclusive. That's O-line, that's tight ends, that's running backs, that's on Quinn, the wide receivers with the hot routes and the side adjustments. That is on everybody. Because there were times where Quinn, when they were blitzing, and he looked like he was looking downfield and didn't like what he saw, and he just decided to eat it. There are times where the offensive line just gets beat, period. There are times where it looks like the offensive line is a little bit confused about who they should block in certain situations, even though they have the numbers advantage. There are times where the running backs just get run over. There are times where it looks like, you know, the tight ends are supposed to be kind of aligned with the offensive line in pass protection. Like that may be a little off. So I think it's and Quinn, of course, right? And how Quinn handles the pressure, and then Quinn being able to see the cornerback blitz potentially, you know, prior to the snap and alert the receiver or him to be a little bit more aware of it. So it's everybody, and it's a perfect bye week, perfect time for a bye week, perfect time for a bye week.
Yeah,
you need it.
Yeah, because you have to figure out what you're gonna do when you inevitably have third and longs, because at this point, everyone's gonna pin their ears back.
Yep.
On every third and long. And why would you not at this point, coach? Bring pressure on third and long. Like they're not going to be able to get the ball out in time. And if you don't get there, put your hands up. But they're not reacting well on third and longs.
Yeah, strangely, and you're right about this because I look at the 6 passes. I'm talking about the six plays, the sacks, the 4 sacks, and the 2 tip pass interceptions. 3 of them were on third down. 2 of those were third and long, third and 9, and third and 11. And the other 3 plays were on first down. Your the A-gap blitz RPO interception that Sark just talked about, your slot cornerback blitz on first down ended up being a sack, and then your slot cornerback tipped interception ended up being that slot cornerback tip was on first down too. To your point. All right, so I think teams are at least figuring out that when Texas on early downs, when they're going to throw in early downs, they ain't going necessarily down the field. It's probably going to be quick. and get your hand, because both of those tipped interceptions were on first down. So what we know about Sark on first down? He's gonna throw quick. Right? It's coming out fast. If we're gonna send a guy, everybody get your hands up and try to affect that weird arm angle that Quinn likes to throw from. So it is, by the way, it's mostly luck. Like, it is mostly luck.
Yes.
But no doubt the strategy helps you to create your own luck. The strategy is let's blitz him.
Yeah.
And try to get in there and just get in his damn face and see if he panics. Okay. And not that he's panicking, but it's a tip pass interception. So it works out in your favor.
Yeah.
Create chaos.
No, and when their number one wide receiver is not on the field because of an injury, it helps you be able to do that because you don't have the same worries in the downfield.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. All right, we'll come back. We got who we got on the other side. We have the topic for the big fat poll today, and we'll have the musically themed day of the week right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Love and Rod Babers coming back on the horn.
Back in the Rodcast on a Monday, and that means it's a Smooth Soul Monday, playing you some Smooth Soul to ease you back in to the work week. Let's get to the big fat poll of the day. Text lines open. 512-447-3776 is the text line number, and we'll get this posted up on X at the Horn ATX.
Patrick's big fat poll of the day on the Horn.
Big fat poll of the day today. Who was the MVP for Texas against Vanderbilt? This one, I think I know who's going to win this one. I feel like I know who's a fan favorite and is going to win this one.
I don't know if you know who you think.
So I'll give you the ones, and I think I know what it is. When I list them off, I feel like I know who's going to win it. So I'll go with you. Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers had 288 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had that run of 17 straight completions. He did throw the 2 picks, though. He did get sacked 4 times. So there is, something to be said there. Maybe that'll take you out. Maybe say, the good he did Yeah, the bad that there was in there outweighs the good, so we're not going to give it to him. Trey Wisner had a pretty good game. 79 rushing yards, 39 receiving yards.
Yeah,
Got some
over
big
100
plays. Trey
all purpose
Wisner
yards,
did
yeah.
pretty well there. DeAndre Moore, 6 receptions, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns. Really stepped up with Isaiah Bond being out. We haven't talked as much about that, but clearly his absence is being shown the last 2 games as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of one of the reasons why this offense doesn't look quite the same is you take away a very dynamic wide receiver who proved that he was a number 1 early in the season. He's not there. DeAndre Moore, though, has stepped up in that absence and has a big game, 6 receivers. This is who I think will win it, though. It's Michael Taft.
Taft, Daddy.
Interception, forced fumble, pass deflection, 6 tackles. Has a heck of a game, makes a huge impact with those 2 turnover forcing plays. So my guess is because he is a fan favorite as well, that Taft will win it. But I'm gonna put it up to you guys because I can guess what you think, but we'll just ask the question and let you go with who you think was the MVP for Texas against Vanderbilt.
It'll be split because DeAndre Moore made those were huge. Those were
huge.
Big plays. They were really big. They were huge, man. And one of them was I think when Quinn was being blitzed too. Was that basically the wheel route that he throws, the quick wheel route that he threw him out there? I believe that was on a play where Quinn was blitzed, and that was matter of fact, both of them. We'll get into this because matter of fact, we'll play that audio next segment because DeAndre Moore in the post game talked about not the wheel route touchdown, but the other, I think it was a 25-yard and a 27-yarder. So the one where he based the slot fade he scores on, and turns out that was a check. That was an audible by Quinn. Like literally during the play, like he was in motion and he had to cross the formation. And while he was crossing Quinn's face, apparently Quinn checked the play or checked his route.
Yes.
While he was crossing his face. Guys, that's pretty high level. I mean, that's pretty. I know a lot of Logan fans are not necessarily big on Quinn right now. They think Quinn may be limiting the offense. That's a big time. Like NFL caliber play, from the start to finish, like to check it and then to make the throw, and like I said, yes, we'd like to see it on every play, but that was really some high level stuff, man. I'm telling you, that was legit.
No, I think that he is. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot when you watch the game and you see what he does that I think he's doing very well. I think he's not putting himself in a losing situation on a lot of plays where he has in the past. And now it's just, again, you're moving stuff from one room to the other. And that's where you're getting some of these tip passes where he's just not, your luck's going to break the wrong way sometimes. And, you're trying to look downfield and you may miss something right in front of you. And then how he's dealing with pressure. But at the same part, he's done a lot of things well. And it's just kind of figuring out the SEC defenses in these, what's coming at you. But hopefully you get a bye week now. You can calm down. You did have those 17 straight completions, which that's really Sark saying, I want you to remember what you can do.
Exactly.
And then we can start building back up. But after that Georgia game, let's just remind you who you are, forget all the noise, and then we'll start to get back into it.
Yep. I think it's exactly it. And, ultimately for Quinn, I think you'll start getting some more of those down the field throws that you got Vandy. But I will say Vandy was playing at first. They were playing a lot of deep safeties too, and they gave you the numbers advantage underneath. And Sark was just taking it, just taking the numbers advantage. As the game wore on, they got a little bit more aggressive. Yep. All right, I like that question though. Who's the MVP of the Texas Vandy game? For me, it's probably going to be Taft. Because that was the best game I've ever seen Taft play. But man, if you want to go with DeAndre Moore, I'm not opposed to that. That was a hell of a game.
No, and
2 touchdowns.
How much does it make sense that you look at that Vanderbilt team? We talk about Pavia, we talk about it's like the walk-ons and the culture and toughness, and they're doing their stuff. You're like, well, Michael Taft's going to walk in that game. Like, y'all think y'all got it? Come out,
that's true.
That's what I did too.
Yep, you're right. That's a great point. We got that story too, by the way. We got that story. Yeah. We got a story like that. DeAndre Moore, we got a good story like that. A guy who's a locker room guy and a glue guy for that, and a character and a culture warrior, if you will. We got those stories too, so we can match up with you. No, that's a great point, and I agree. I think he played the game of his life. Maybe he was inspired by, hey, Pavia's story is somebody who, was able to climb all the way to the top after, being, overlooked and had to walk on and do it the hard way. Well, same thing with Taft Daddy. And right now, I got to tell you, that best performance I've ever seen him play. So good for him. And I think he's my pick for the player of the game. But that'll be the topic for the Big Fat Poll today. Go check it out. We'll get that posted for you. We come back. We'll talk some NFL. We got to talk about the Cowboys and that Old Testament style butt whipping they received at the hand of the 49ers. We'll also talk about the Texans and barely squeaking by the Colts and continue breaking down Texas versus Vanderbilt and the Longhorns victory. Now 7-1 and 6th ranked Longhorns in the country. Right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, coming back on the Horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a Smooth Soul Monday edition of the Rodcast. That's when my co-host, the Idealionaire Patrick Davis, he plays jams from basic jams intended to soothe the tortured soul of sports fans who may have had a tough weekend. Talking about you Cowboys fans, but also to make sure that weekend enjoyment that you had, that man, you don't lose too much of it from suffering through a traumatic case of the Monday. When you're dealing with traffic and adulting and the meetings. So in order to make the transition from your fun-filled, stress-free, very relaxing weekend to the very stressful work week, he wants to make it a Smooth Soul Mondays, to make it a smooth transition for you. So we appreciate Patrick hooking us up.
This is sending out to Jerry Jones and the Cowboys with the song's called Running Out of Lies. See what he says this week.
Wow. Yeah, it's good. I didn't even realize that.
Yeah.
Was that Johnny Taylor?
Johnny Taylor.
Was it? Yeah, man. Yeah. That's a nice one right there. Running out of lies. Yeah, I don't know. I even heard somebody say, I wonder if this is the beginning of the ticking clock for Mike McCarthy now.
No, I think that clock has been ticking for a minute.
Well, it's probably been ticking, but now you can hear it. Now you can hear like the 60 minutes clock. Now it's loud. Like it's really loud now. I'm with you. I don't know what the solution is for the Cowboys. I thought the Cowboys would make a move of some sort during the bye week. We talked about this, guys, and that was with an extra week to prepare. Like that was with extra time. That's part of why they had the advantage. They had extra time to prepare.
Yeah.
And I guess it lasted for a half. So for a half, the Cowboys looked like they were in control of the game, or it looked like they were in a position to win that game. And then the second half, the 49ers flipped the switch on them. And the 49ers do have a championship switch because they have played 4 championships and they know what it takes. They have that standard. They have that pedigree and that DNA, and the Cowboys do not. It is clear. They don't have that. And each year, they seem to be getting further and further away from it in comparing themselves to the 49ers, who have been that team. I don't know if they're going to be that team this year in the NFC, but they have been that team. If they get healthy, they could very well be that team. And we talked about this all the time. It doesn't matter who's running the football for the 49ers in that system. You know, they're going to be productive. I believe Garindo is basically the 4th string running back for him after Jordan Mason.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because then there's Elijah Mitchell before that, and Christian McCaffrey. So now and what he have? 85 yards. End up with 85 yards.
Big touchdown run.
Yeah, that's crazy. So that's a culture thing for them. That's just how they operate. And yeah, I mean, they came out in the second half and really showed you what the difference is. The disparity, the Grand Canyon size gap between them and the Cowboys, and Dak continues to struggle versus the 49ers. They know how to beat Dak too.
Yeah.
And I'm a Dak fan, but I can't be a Dak apologist. They know how to beat Dak.
No. And then
Dak hadn't beat him since 2017.
Man, you saw Dalvin Cook come out, and that's probably why he hadn't made the roster so far this year, was because he just wasn't there. And then Rico Dottle missed a game because he got sick. So he came down with something, and then he missed the game. But Debo got sick earlier in the week, so he could play. Not the trade you wanted to make for guys getting sick there. But Rico Dottle being out took away, you already don't really have much of a running game, but that hurt it more.
56 net yards rushing.
Yeah.
That's true. 56 net yards rushing. And by the way, they average the lowest. They're the worst rushing team in the NFL, and they usually average 77 yards. That's their, like I said, NFL low average of 77 yards rushing per game. They couldn't even meet that.
No.
Yeah.
And 11 of that is Kevontae Turpin.
Yeah. I'll give them credit, though, with Dak and CD, what they did toward the end of the game to make it interesting, because at one point I'm thinking to myself, man, this is just going to be – it's going to look ugly, and the score is going to indicate how ugly it is. Well, actually, it wouldn't, because at halftime, like I said, it was still a competitive game, and the Cowboys were in control of that game. But, man, I cannot believe the 49ers defense was so dreadful at the end and could not neutralize. They couldn't take away CeeDee Lamb, and they kept losing him. And it wasn't just CeeDee Lamb making great plays. They literally would just lose him within the structure of the offense. And it wasn't like some elaborate, very sophisticated route combination or some very, elaborate formation that they would use. No, it was just like run up the field and run just a slot fade, and they would lose him. Or he'd run a simple crossing route, a mesh concept, and they'd lose him. And I really couldn't understand how that was happening. That's why the 49ers got some issues, especially on defense. They got good players, of course.
Yeah.
But, man, their lapses late in games are wild. And that's becoming a theme, unfortunately.
Yeah, because that was those lapses, that's college football stuff.
Yes, great point. That's a good one.
That's the type of thing where you go, oh, we have some young players in the secondary, and they're playing a zone, and they tried to stay, and they just didn't realize a guy was breaking free because we had some guys in Maine. I get that. That's college football, though. You don't do that in the pros.
Mm-hmm.
And that where just nobody sees what's happening. There's no communication. Those were bad. I mean, and there was that play, Kevontae Turpin at the end. If he makes that catch, Cowboys are still in the game.
Oh, that was a
Got
beautiful
one.
throw.
Dak threw it, and you just go,
That
man.
deep one was a third. It was a 3rd and 10, right?
It was a
That was
third and 10. He drops
Yeah.
it in perfect, and it just hits
Oh,
Turpin's
my
helmet
goodness.
first.
And it was decent coverage. Like, it wasn't bad coverage.
It was just a really good throw.
It was an amazing
Like, you
throw.
don't get throws like that very often downfield.
No,
and it was
you
so
don't.
good. And you're like, oh, man.
It
If
was.
you could have
That was
caught that.
yeah. You're right. I forgot all about that throw. Yeah. It seemed like Dak started cooking late in the game. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like he really started cooking late in the game. Like, well, that's like the game's over, but not for Dak. Dak started going, and it brought him back into the game a little bit too. I mean, it made it a game. I still felt like the 49ers were going to win, and ultimately they did. But you'll give the Cowboys credit. That was no quit in at least Dak and CD in the offense. It didn't seem like they quit. They just don't have the resources. And I think that's ultimately on the front office. They don't right now. The offense is just very limited, especially with the absence of or with the worst running game in the NFL and the absence of a dynamic running back. And then there are some other issues the Cowboys have. I mean, defensively, major issues defensively. Cowboys still can't really stop the run. And they're having, I mean, that Kittle just went off. I don't know how their safeties have issues covering tight ends too. It seemed like that would be the case because Kittle just went off and the safeties, they couldn't do anything about it. They just didn't match up. He had a season high 128 yards receiving on 6 receptions. And I saw that even toward the end of the first half, Kittle found something. And once they found it, they were like, all right, they can't cover Kittle. So even when they had a guy underneath them and a guy over the top of him, he still would split them. And him and Purdy have a pretty good connection. And then Purdy started getting it cooking with the run game a little bit. And that's another added dimension. I actually like Zimmer's game plan. Remember, we had the 6 guys across the front. It wasn't a terrible game plan. It's just that Kyle Shanahan adjusted really, really well. And once he made his adjustments, you didn't see a counter. Well, there wasn't an effective counter for the Cowboys defensively. I think most of the 49ers started getting their own way. And then, of course, with the injuries that have been setting in and, Mason had that shoulder injury. So I think for the 49ers, they kind of held on, but they've done that before. They've lost twice this season after having a double-digit lead. That was almost another time where they did. They had another game earlier this year where they almost lost another double-digit lead. That's just I don't know. For some reason, they're in trouble closing out teams. LSU's been like that, actually.
Yeah.
LSU, they have control of a game, and then it just unravels for them. So I'm not comparing LSU but to your point, you talked about that's a college football thing.
Yeah.
That's what Brian Kelly's been upset about with his team. They had control of that game with the Aggies, and that thing Connor Wigman got benched, and Marshall Reed came in, and they couldn't figure that out.
As we laugh, it kind of happened to Texas a few years back where we were saying the all gas, no brakes, and we're like, you keep hitting the brakes. Yeah. Stop hitting the brakes.
or you crash, and then you let them back in.
Like
I agree.
You just keep letting these teams back in, and it feels like that San Francisco is. You're like, why are you stopping playing aggressive football? Because you stop playing aggressively, and your team suddenly, everyone once you stop calling the plays aggressively, they all feel like, game's over. It's the beginning of the fourth quarter. It's not over. Play.
It felt like it, but I know I can see why they had that low because it did. It felt like the Cowboys were ready to roll over. It's like, I guess the Cowboys just roll. I guess it's over. No. And then the Cowboys started that run. Basically, CD and Dak just started making plays, and then they scored so quickly. And you went, "Oh, they scored real quick." Actually, if they score quick again, it's a game. And they scored quick again, and then it became a game for the 49ers, and then they ended up closing out the Dallas Cowboys because they just couldn't convert that final 3rd and long. But you're right, that 3rd and 10, and that was that. I don't even know why Dak threw that, but I was saying, why is he throwing it so deep? And he has so much belief in himself. I guess he knew he was going to throw a perfect ball, and he threw it to Turpin of all people.
Turpin,
like, why he threw it to Turpin? But I can't criticize him. I didn't necessarily like the decision, but I can't criticize because it was a perfect pass.
Perfect pass.
Like it was
apparently need to be like 2 inches further out so it didn't hit his face mask, but
yeah.
I'm not going to criticize 2 inches on a throw.
Yeah, but the coverage was good. That's why I was like, why did he throw it? Because the coverage wasn't bad. Was there no other receiver with separation? Because it was 3rd and 10. You pick up 7, 8 yards.
Territory,
yeah. So I thought, oh man, but Dak went for it all. And hey man, that was big Dak energy move right there. And like I said, it was a perfect throw. He just guys didn't help him out. But yeah, I think for the Cowboys, they got major issues. This is just the beginning.
No, and this is why we talk about Mike McCarthy. You just see more and more of it where it feels like Mike McCarthy is an offensive coordinator who's cosplaying as a head coach. And that you can't have that on a team that already has, some culture issues, that the special teams just like, well, we'll start with a bad field position every single time because we're just going to get a penalty on the kickoff. And we're going to run this like fake end around 40 times in the season. And then the time we do it, we'll pitch it forwards.
That was weird.
How do you do that? If you run the fake over and over and over again, that this has to be ingrained in you that you run it in practice. And then you do it incorrectly and you get a penalty. You get holdings on things. You get illegal formations. So many of these happen on special teams. Like, you have to be able to go. And in the NFL now with the head coaches, it's like you have to be so obsessed with winning that you are a stickler on every point of the ball, offense, defense, and special teams. Even if you're an offensive guy or a defensive guy, you have to be involved in everything. It just feels like he's not involved in anything but the offense. And even that, he's not necessarily giving him a huge schematic advantage.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, and right now it's the running game. I think the Cowboys passing game, will find its way and be able to score.
Yeah, especially when
points.
Brandon Cooks comes back. I think it'll help it out.
Exactly. And Jake Ferguson's a nice weapon. I do worry that they're going to be just a one-dimensional football team. That they can't run the football.
No.
And defensively, they don't stop the run very well. That's their two biggest issues. They don't stop the run really well, and they don't run the football really well. They're two of the worst in the NFL, worst teams. They're 31st in rush defense, so they're not the worst, but they're pretty close to being the worst, and they're the worst running game. I don't know with deficiencies that glaring if, you can win consistently in this league with deficiencies that glaring, with two of them, by the way, and two so closely related ones. Because the run game allows you to control the game. Cowboys can't control games because they don't have a run game on offense. And then other teams can kind of dictate the terms of every matchup against you because your rush defense is so bad. It's porous. So I don't know. I don't know if I don't know what solutions the Cowboys have for that. I thought they would look for more solutions in the bye week. They did not. So they like their guys, and now they're stuck with their guys. And the rest of that schedule, it's looking tough, man. Especially you hadn't played Washington yet, and Washington right now. I think prior to the season, everybody thought those were, it's 2 wins. You don't play Washington, boom, that's 2 dubs right there. Not really, not guaranteed dubs right there.
Nope.
Philadelphia's never a guaranteed dub. All right, and you got those are division foes. Giants, that's guaranteed dub. Giants are terrible, but other than that, I mean, they're in a lot of win. They're in a lot of in my opinion, not like guaranteed wins left on that schedule for the Cowboys. So they got to figure some things out. All right, Texans, they also got to figure some things out, but they're doing it as they win. So I'll give the Texans credit. Yeah, the Texans do have some issues, but they're still finding a way to pull out the games and find a way to win. And against the Colts, another ugly win for the Texans, but they found a way to do it. And to me, the major issue for the Texans, we can start with the good, and since they won the game, we want to start with the critiques. But the pass rush for the Texans was elite in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Considering they're going up against one of the most mobile, athletic quarterbacks at the position, they had a 60, according to Next Gen. They had a 60% pressure rate against the Colts. That's absurd. That was tied for the highest pressure rate by a defense in a game this season. They pressured him 24 times, sacked him 5 times. We talked about his completion percentage being one of the lowest in the league among starting quarterbacks. But man, they harassed him. He was only 5 of 17 on when he was under pressure for 124 yards, and that was most of the day. And the Texans defense, man, they really did. They did a great job just dialing up the pressure. Sometimes it was the blitz. Sometimes it was organic pressure from Danielle Hunter, who, by the way, is just he's a stud. That was a hell of a pickup by the Texans. Him along with Will Anderson, I mean, they're in the conversation, honestly, to be one of the best pass rushing defensive edge duos in the league right now.
Yeah.
We haven't talked about it, but they really are. They're that good so far. Danielle Hunter, He had I think among his pressures, it says here, this is from shout out to Next Gen Stats here, talking about Daniil Hunter. Dude, he was a freak. It says here he generated team high 12 pressures on 33 pass rushes, the second most pressures in a game this season. And so along him and Will Anderson, I mean, that dude right now he had 2 sacks. They might be playing at an all-pro level if he keeps that up too. And both of those guys, like I said, they're in the conversation. They might be the best defensive edge duo, or one of the best defensive edge duos in all of football. This is also part of the problem. You flip it. It's like the Cowboys, right? You talk about their rush defense and their rushing offense being so bad. For the Texans, their pass rush is really good, among the best in the NFL now, but their pass protection is what I think ultimately is leaky, right? It needs a lot of work. And I don't know because last game versus the Green Bay Packers, they had almost a 50% pressure rate against CJ Stroud. They only blitzed him like 17% of the time. At one point in this game, according to Next Gen, there was a scorching 70% pressure rate. He had been pressured on 20 of his 28 dropbacks, CJ Stroud. Against that, that's crazy. Yeah. Against the Colts, who are not an elite pass rushing group.
No.
So that's a problem. And now we're talking about 2 weeks in a row where you're talking about, historically high pressure rates that the Texans offensive line's allowing against CJ Stroud, who's, that's your franchise. That's the face of your franchise. You got to protect him at all costs. And they've spent a lot of draft capital on the O-line. O-line has a ton of talent. It's obviously communication. It's maybe some, I don't know, for the O-line, it may just be a schematic issue too. Something with Bobby Slowick and the way that they're setting the pass protection. Maybe it's a little bit on CJ Stroud. Maybe he is responsible for setting the pass protection. Maybe not. Whatever the issue may be, they got to figure it out. They better figure it out fast.
Yeah, and I would think that Shaq Mason would be a part of that, helping set, because he's pretty much your only veteran on the interior interior O line, and that's really where you can't really do it from tackle. You're not really going to set protections from the tackle position. No. So your quarterback, center, and then maybe your guards are going to help you out some in that. And it just feels like between CJ Stroud and whoever's been playing center, one of their young guys, because they've had to switch out soon with the injuries, whether it's Patterson or Scruggs or whoever's in there, they're just not setting it well enough. And I don't know if Shaq Mason, maybe that's one of the reasons why he got traded, was that he's just that's not one of his skill sets. But it feels like you're at a point where you've drafted a lot of guys, but somebody's not picking up the defenses right, whether it's Stroud, whether it's the center, whether it's Scruggs or Patterson or Mason or like whoever it is on that. You have to find somebody who knows what they're doing to pick up these blitzes, because at some point you're just not setting protections correctly, and then not communicating once you get going, and there's just massive holes and just over and over again this is a problem. And so at some point you have to go in and start looking at that offensive coordinator or the offensive line coach being like, what how much are you working with them, and where's the problem, and how can we fix it? Because you need to have a solution now, because it's getting worse and worse and worse. And these are not elite teams that we're playing.
No, not from a pressure standpoint, not from a pressure perspective. They're not elite teams, but they're able to apply elite pressure rates, or at least elite amounts of pressure against this Texans offense. And like I said, Texans have talent on that O-line. It's not a talent issue. There's talent there. Like you said, maybe it's a development issue. Maybe it's a scheme issue. They better figure it out rather quickly before this schedule gets a lot tougher. And they're going to face a whole lot more elite pass rushers on the schedule as the season continues. So that's the Texans' big issue. But the running game, I think, really helps them.
Oh, yeah.
And Joe Mixon, as long as, I'm knock on wood here, Joe Mixon can stay healthy. I mean, he's almost guaranteed to get you 100. He wasn't, as efficient in this game. I think he only averaged a little over 4 yards per carry, but he gives you a true dynamic presence in the run game. So there's a way for you to at least deal with the pressure or mitigate the pressure that teams are going to apply by just running the football effectively. And you can do that.
And if it keeps you on schedule more, where you're on, second and shorts and third and shorts, it's harder for them to just come after you as much because you can get the ball out a little bit quicker. You can, you can run plays where you have easier checkdowns. You don't have to put the ball downfield. So those plays is what help as well. And then you play against a quarterback who is one of the worst halves I've ever seen from a start. That
Man, he's so bad. I don't know how they can justify
his line. People did not see what Anthony Richardson threw for in the first half. It was 2 for 15 for a touchdown interception. And the reality was he threw a 69-yard bomb.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, it was a blown coverage. It was a complete blown coverage. Downs was wide open. And
it happens a lot when the Colts play the Texans.
Yes. But it was just a blown coverage. He hits him on that one because he can put the ball anywhere on the field at that point. He's got a pretty wide range, and Downs can just run under it and then go in for the going for the touchdown. And so that one play, if you take that one play out, that one blown coverage, he's 1 for 14 with an interception for 12 yards. That is crazy to take those numbers, but 2 for 15 for a starting quarterback is insane. He was a little better in the second half, but not enough that he should have still been in there. And then he took himself out on a big third down or fourth down at the end of the game. He took himself out, and they were like, "Are you hurt?" And he goes, "I was just tired." What?
Did he say that?
Yes, he said he ran around too much on the last play and was getting hit, and just said, "I need to take a play off." And you're like, "Yeah, not this one."
Wow. Yeah. No, I don't know how I don't know how long they're going to stick with him. And I get it. It was a developmental draft pick and when you got him, so you knew you were going to have to go through a lot of growing pains. But man, considering how close some of these games are with him at quarterback, you could win these games, like especially games against the Texans, right? You've had a 3-point loss to the Texans and a 2-point loss to the Texans. And your quarterback I guess he played better in the first one. He was 9 of 19, but he was less than 50% completion percentage, but it was 3 big bombs. He was like 3 bombs for 40 plus yards that basically led to him getting 212 yards passing. And then this one, he was 10 of 32, but as you pointed out, 2 of 15 or whatever.
To start, in the first half. 2 of 15. And
he ended up being 31% completion percentage. And you only lost by 3 points. To me, if you're the Texans,
and you only lost by 3. If that guy, they run a play late in the game, the Texans do, where they lateral the ball, and it's a bad lateral, and Indy gets it, and then the guy gets up and runs down the field for a touchdown, and you're losing now. If you're the Texans, you now have like a minute and a half to come back down and score to win the game. But they come back and they say he was down by contact, and now you had to put the Indy offense back out there, and that was kind of the end of the game. But that, like, you were that close to winning if you're Indianapolis, that if he's not down by contact, you win the game, most likely.
True. It's amazing. No, I'm saying their recipe to win is, I'm surprised it's this close in these games. I mean, he's completing less than 50% of his passes, and they're winning some of these games. I mean, he completed against Chicago 50% of his passes, and they won that game 21-16. He completed 41% of his passes versus Miami. Now, Miami didn't have Tua, I don't think, then, so a different Miami team, and they won that game. Against Green Bay, he completed 50% of his passes. They only lost by 6. Against the Texans, he completed 47% of his passes in week 1. They lost by 2. He completed 31% of his passes this past Sunday, and they lost by 3. I think that's amazing. Yeah. Like, I don't know how in a modern game how they're keeping these games close. I don't watch enough Colts football, but that's amazing.
No, and if
they should be getting blown out.
And I think someone needs to talk to Shane Steichen, because he's like, that's our quarterback, that's our future. And like, Shane, that's not your future. That's your future firing.
Yes, you coaching these guys up. You get you a better quarterback, bro. You can win some games.
Hey, I get Joe Flacco ain't great, but he went to the playoffs last year.
Come on now. I'm with you on that. I don't know. That's crazy. But for the Texans, they get another win for CJ Stroud. He actually had a turnover in that game. He ended up having that fumble in that game, and I think he was sacked twice in the game. But I thought he had a nice bounce back performance from the Green Bay performance, which was one of the worst performances that we've seen from him. He had almost 300 yards passing for CJ Stroud, but it's not his fault. Not completely his fault, but they got to figure out the pass protection. Yep. All right, we come back. We'll get into Rod's rant. I noticed a trend that I think is affecting Texas' offensive productivity. and it's a macro thing that I'm gonna start the macro and then make my way to the micro. Football theory 101. That's what we get into, but it's a Texas football related one, and we'll talk about what may be one of the biggest reasons we've seen regression and we've seen a drop in productivity from the Texas offense over the last 3 weeks. It's obvious, might have been staring you in the face, but sometimes we miss it. Sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees. I'll point out the forest and the trees when we come back right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. Hey, what's up, folks? Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers here. Let me tell you about my friend and my dentist, Dr. Greg Eckert, and he wants to be your dentist as well. And trust me, you want Dr. Eckert not only as a friend, but as a dentist, because he's the best dentist in Austin. And it doesn't matter what your issue is. Hopefully, it's not a serious issue, but for me, it actually was. I went in initially for a routine cleaning and checkup, and while they were doing the very thorough checkup, they found that my wisdom teeth were actually growing in sideways. It was impacting my molars. It was doing some devastating, disastrous stuff in my with my dentistry, and it turns out I needed a lot of help. And Dr. Eckert and his team, they came to my rescue and made sure that I was knowledgeable and informed about the entire process. Made sure I was educated about everything going on, and got the procedure scheduled. I was back at work within a couple of days, and my dental health and dental hygiene have never been better, thanks to Dr. Eckert and his wonderful team. Now, hopefully for you, it's not as serious as having all your wisdom teeth removed and extracted. Hopefully it's something routine, like a routine checkup or a cleaning. But if it is something serious, you're in great hands with Dr. Eckert and his wonderful team. Now, if it's general dentistry or teeth whitening or veneers or porcelain crowns, dentures, full mouth reconstruction, even root canal therapy, whatever it takes to ensure you're getting the best quality dental care available, that's what Dr. Eckert and his team are all about. And right now, because of their technological advances and their intellectual curiosity, they can give you a brand new smile in just 1 day. Permanently secured to your dental implants. No time spent without teeth. You'll get temporary fixtures first until they complete your permanent smile. You'll smile again with confidence and eat freely without pain or discomfort. It's a lifelike permanent solution. So if you've been told your teeth need to be replaced, just call Dr. Eckert today to learn about this revolutionary alternative to dentures. It's a brand new smile in just 1 day. Sounds too good to be true. It's not. It's just Dr. U. It's a complimentary consultation, which means you got nothing to lose but so much to gain, because a confident smile can truly change your life. And Dr. Eckert wants to change your life for the better. He did it for me. He can do it for you as well. And right now, you got the end of the year coming up, and you don't want to lose those benefits. You want to make sure you use those benefits to help you and your family. And Dr. Eckert can help you out with that. So give him a call, 512-345-3166. That's 512-345-3166. And tell him you heard it right here on the horn, and you'll get a free Zoom whitening with whatever treatment you're getting there at Dr. Eckert's office. Visit dreckert.com, DRUECKERT.com. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into Rod's rant of the day. I know a lot of folks out there have been they've been worried, stressed out about watching the Texas offense the last 3 weeks or so. Because we've seen not only a little bit of regression with Quinn. I thought Quinn bounced back though last game versus Vanderbilt pretty well. We talked about that. We'll continue to talk about that. But the offense overall, and I would say that I think my biggest concerns that there is no offensive identity really. And the offense is good and talented. They got a ton of talent on the offense, and they'll be able to score points because Sark is really good at what he does. Right, he's a brilliant play designer and play caller, and you do have high level NFL caliber talent at skill positions on the O line. But in terms of them having a cohesive identity, something they do, what an identity for me is what do you do as well, if not better than everybody else? And what can you lean on, right? That you consider, oh, no, this is our strength and this is what we do well. And I thought initially that was the passing game. And I still kind of lean that way. It's got to be the passing game. But I'll admit, well, when pass protection is an issue and your quarterback has, regressed at times, or at least he's inconsistent and is limited some in things that he can execute within the offense, I don't know if you can say the passing game overall is your strength, but when I look at the weapons in the passing game now, I'm adding Amari Noblack to that, right? In addition to the deepest wide receiving core potentially in the country, and then Gunnar Helm playing like one of the best tight ends in the country, right? We probably saw that was probably a showdown between the top two tight ends in the SEC, by the way. Stowers is fantastic for Vanderbilt, and Gunnar Helm has been amazing so far for Texas. Worked himself into being a mid-round draft pick, but I digress with that. And then Jaden Blue in the passing game, right? Jaden Blue. Let's be honest, guys. Jaden Blue's not a Jaden Blue is the way they are using him. They are using him as a receiver more so than a running back. Like that's I'm not saying they don't give him rushing attempts, but he gets way more targets than he does rushes. Like they are using him in that manner. So to me, he's more of a weapon in the passing game. My point being the passing game should lead the way. That is your strength. And I think that's what they're going to get back to during the season. But I'll admit right now, how can you say that's your identity when, you pass protection may be your big issue and that your quarterback doesn't handle pressure really well and teams are going to pressure you more. So if that is your identity right now, your identity is, in question. It's being threatened a little bit. And I think for Texas, the run game is what Sark would pivot to, but this will be arguably one of Sark's weakest run games he's ever had as a play caller and a play designer. It's not weak, but remember, he's a guy that has had 1,000-yard rusher in 12 straight seasons as a play caller, as a head coach play caller, as an offensive coordinator. And I don't know if that's going to happen this year. Now, it may end up happening if you end up playing, 3 playoff games on top of, the SEC title game or that. Then, yes, you may end up with 1,000 rusher. But right now, it's not, it's not trending that way. And Trey Wiseman may have just that type of, in an explosive, prolific into the season. Right now, it's not trending toward you having one of those 1,000-yard kind of workhorse running backs. So the running game is starting to, in my opinion, it's starting to find its groove, but it's still not a running game that can impose its will. It's not that formidable yet. And what I've noticed is the drop off for Texas. Yes, it did coincide with Quinn's injury, the drop off offensively, or at least the lack of an identity. Yes, it did track a little bit with that, but then you still had Arch out there, and Arch is, he's making making a very mature plays. All right, for a quarterback, inexperienced quarterback, making his first and second start, and you were still pretty prolific offensively. It's really once you got into SEC play where we saw some of the pass protection issues really start to rear their ugly head. And then when Quinn came back from the injury, the offense started to shift even more to a conservative approach in the passing game. I also think it coincides with remember the first 5 games of the schedule, you play all offensive head coaches. They were all offensive head coaches. Not one head coach from a defensive background in the first 5 games. And in the last 3 games, you faced all defensive head coaches. And to be an offensive head coach, the truth is, I don't know if you have to be elite. I think it's all about the timing and the situation, because that's just offense gets these days the benefit of the doubt. If you're a defensive head coach these days, NFL or college, you were probably an exceptional, extraordinary, elite defensive mind. Chances of it, as opposed to some of the offensive coaches that get jobs. It just off the top of my, I haven't done the research, but just thinking about it. I mean, the defensive coaches you face, head coaches, Brent Venables, Kirby Smart, Clark Lee. Right? Those are some of the best the offensive coaches you face. Nah, Sharon Moore got the job. He's an offensive coach. How'd he get a job? Jim Harbaugh said he should get the job. You know what I mean? Like that, like offensive guys, you can get it. It takes less, in my opinion. I think it takes less of a robust, prodigious resume, an impressive resume to get a head coaching job as an offensive guy. If a defensive guy gets a head coaching job, man, you trust me, that your resume has to be stacked. Because people just they everything tends to lean offense these days, and everybody wants offense. If you're going to stand out defensively, like I said, I think you have to be extraordinary in many ways. Offensively, as long as you got the right scheme, right system, right time, you can be a flash in the pan. I know I'm using that. Well, I'm using that term like an old man, but you don't even have to have been established that long as an offensive head coach to get a job. Defensively, man, you had to be around for a minute. They had to know your system works over and over and over again. Like, all right, you know what? You've been doing it for a while. We like it. Let's bring them on. There is no. What's the last defensive coach that just becomes a flash in the pan? Well, they hadn't been established for a long time, but got a head coaching gig quickly. It doesn't happen very often. I'm sure there's some, but it doesn't happen very often.
Maybe Will Muschamp when he went to Florida.
Muschamp, that was that. Yeah, you can argue that he was head coaching waiting here at Texas before that. Right? So yeah, but you know what I mean. But
that's a while ago
it's
too.
Rare.
It didn't work
it's
out.
One of them.
So.
Yeah, that's true. But man, so that's my theory. And with that being said, think about the last 3 games. That's where your aggression really started. So I think it is the Quinn thing is part of it. But I went and looked up these numbers. So I was like, okay, let me go look up the numbers for some important categories. I will look at them from where they rank during the season, throughout the season, and where they rank in the last 3 games. And I'll be damned. You might be damned too. Let's look at yards per attempt. Texas 17th in the country in yards per attempt. That's good enough. Top 20, right? You are in the last 3 weeks when you face defensive head coaches, you're 105th in yards per attempt. Go from 17th to 105th. If you're looking at yards per completion, you were yards per completion, you're 53rd. That's just not, that's just average. That's not great, but it's nothing, to be ashamed of. You're, 12.3 yards per completion in the last 3 games, 127th in yards per completion. It's a pretty significant drop. In sack percentage allowed, you're 61st on the season. This is where you are on the season. So, like I said, not elite, but not at the bottom. All right. You're not 100. You're not in the triple digits. But last 3 weeks, you are. Last 3 weeks, you're 109th in sack percentage allowed. Rushing yards per game, you were 61st. Like I said, you're average, basically right around being average. In the first, basically on the season. But in the last 3 weeks, you dropped to 110th in rushing yards per game. Yeah. So yards per attempt, you go from 17th to 121st in the last. 105th in the last 3 games. Yards per completion, you go from 53rd to 127th in the last 3 games. Sack percentage allowed 61st to 109th in the last 3 games. Rushing yards per game, you go from 61st to 110th in the last 3 games. So if that's what Longhorn fans are looking at, and look at your sacks allowed, you've allowed 17 sacks on the season. 12 of them have come in the last 3 games. That's a troubling trend. And Oklahoma, I think he was only one in the Oklahoma game. It wasn't like you. It wasn't like it was the dam broke in the Oklahoma game. No, that was just one, but 11 in the last 2 weeks. And the thing that's troubling about the 11 you've allowed in the last 2 weeks, Georgia wasn't as troubling. Actually, Vanderbilt, your pass protection issues in the Vanderbilt game was more troubling to me than Georgia, because Georgia just whipped you, and Georgia's got 5 stars. Georgia's got 5 stars. They got guys going to play on Sundays, first round draft picks, second round draft picks at every level of that defense. And so that's not surprising. You just got beat, and they beat you with a 3-man rush, 4-man rush, 5-man blitz. They beat you with a 0 blitz. They beat you with a gap blitz. They had a cornerback blitz coming off the side to get a strip sack on there. They did it in a variety of ways. It was a master class on how many different ways they could apply pressure. That was the beauty of that game plan. This game plan by Vanderbilt was just Vanderbilt looking at Georgia's game plan and going, well, we ain't got 5 stars. We can't do everything Georgia did, but we can pick out a few concepts that I think we can execute. Cornerback blitz. Let's take that. Let's take that A-gap blitz. I like that. How about the delayed rusher? We can do that. And they just took a few concepts and they all worked very well for them. Your six plays, there were either a tipped interception or a sack. 5 of them had either a A-gap blitz and or a cornerback blitz. 4 of them had a cornerback blitz, 4 of the 6, and 2 of the 6 had an A-gap blitz. Think they figured something out? Highest blitz rate that Texas had faced all year was versus Vanderbilt. They figured something out. And I think more teams are going to do it. But I think the defensive coaches have a better chance of it, though, because they all speak the same language, defensive coaches. So they're just taking, Kirby Smart saw Venables' game plan and went, that's pretty good. Venables is great at disguise, and he's great at pre-snap manipulation. We're going to do that. We're going to have a different front pre-snap and post-snap and a different secondary coverage look, or we're going to mix and max our coverage pre and post-snap so that Quinn never has any idea what's happening. So he took that kind of from the Venables game plan, by the way, both years, because Venables had that same successful game plan the year prior when Oklahoma beat Texas. And then he just added his own mix to it. And I think now you got Vandy, who took some of what Georgia did, and Georgia was inspired by some of what Venables did, but they're all defensive guys. When you face another offensive guy, Billy Napier and Sam Pittman, chances are Sark does a great job of being able to win the chess match with those offensive coaches, because he's an offensive coach. He knows how they think, he knows how they operate, knows their method, their strategies, their tactics. They're all offensive guys. They think the same. They're from the same realm. Defensive guys, a little different. And defensive guys, I think against Texas, they are all the conceptual signatures I talk about and identify all the time with you guys. They know them all. And it's pretty obvious they're starting to pick up on some of them. So the games that you probably should be most worried about, Mark Stoops and Kentucky, because that's a Stoops. And I'm sure he'll ask the advice of other Stoops, who will ask the advice of Brent Venables. And so that game plan, they can use it. And they got some good defensive personnel. Got 3 or 4 guys that'll play on Sundays on that Kentucky defense. And then Mike Elko and what the Aggies are doing. That might be your biggest concern, because as a defensive guy, he can decipher what Oklahoma, Georgia, and Vandy have done and translate it into his defense better than some of the offensive head coaches. And like I said, to be a defensive head coach, usually you got to be freaking stellar. You just can't be no flash in the pan. All right. You know your ish if you're a defensive head coach. And Texas right now, it seems like that with Sark, that's who he's having trouble, winning the chess match against consistently. They're still winning the games. I mean, that's well, not against Kirby Smart, but still winning the games. But in terms of the offense being able to dictate the terms of the matchup, the defenses are starting to dictate the terms to Sark, and that's not usually how it works. And I think they're just doing it with pressure. I think it's just pressure. I think Kirby Smart did it with pressure, and I think Vandy did it with pressure. They created them different ways. Vandy had to blitz a lot to do it. Kirby Smart, he blitzed. I think probably higher than his average, but he wasn't excessive or gratuitous, because he can get there with NFL caliber talent. Mikael Williams on the outside and Walker on the outside. Vandy didn't have that. So Vandy only beat you for a sack one-on-one one time. They beat Cam Williams. He basically he kind of overset in his pass set. He kind of set up a little too high, and the guy went underneath him. And that was the only time you really got beat. Otherwise, it was scheme that beat you. Scheme beat you. That's why that was scary. Georgia's not scary. Georgia just whipped you. Sometimes you just get beat. Guy's just better. He's on scholarship too. Vandy, that was more of a scheme situation. That's why it's scarier. That's why it's a little more troubling. All right, we come back. We'll get into the what the facts, what the stats portion of the show right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the home. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time for what the facts, what the stats here on the show. How about this one? As we're talking about Texas and Vanderbilt a lot today. I saw this one. Guys, we got to start. I mean, Vanderbilt, they're starting to make it a regular thing to be to basically upset, or I would say win, and when they're a double-digit underdog, pull off upsets. They didn't pull off an upset against Texas. It was a little close for comfort. But at least when they are considered to be a double-digit underdog, so a big dog, that's when they play some of their best football. And that's what happened against Texas. They played some of their best football. How about this stat got it from Fox Sports? Says here that when they have been a double-digit underdog. All right. That in the last 6 games where they have been a double-digit underdog, that Vanderbilt has covered each of the last 6 games as a double-digit dog, and they've won 3 of them outright. So that's impressive. That means they're doing a lot to give the middle finger to Vegas, and that's a scrappy team, man. And double digit dog, 17.5 point dog. I think they were to Texas. It could have been that. It could have easily turned into that, but they cashed in on a lot of mistakes that Texas made, and I think that's kind of their recipe. They remind me a lot of the K-State teams from back in the day. K-State was like that, very unassuming. That they play with gritty, kind of this gritty mentality, very scrappy mentality, and they would kind of choke opponents out. They don't make a lot of mistakes, even though they had 3 turnovers in that game. They only came into the game with 2 turnovers on the entire season, and Texas ended up forcing 3, so that was pretty good. But they usually don't make a lot of mistakes. That was part of why Texas was able to beat them, because they did make some uncharacteristic mistakes against Texas, or Texas was able to force them in a position where they made some mistakes. But, man, imagine that. When Vanderbilt's a double-digit dog, I don't know when they're going to be a double-digit dog again. I doubt it this season. I think they'll probably, now give Vanderbilt a lot more respect. But when they're a double-digit dog, you want to bet that, because the last 6 times they've been a double-digit dog, not only have they covered the spread, but also they have won 3 times outright and actually gave Texas a little bit of a run for its money too. All right, another what the facts, what the stats. How about
I
this?
will give you quickly, crazy enough. They are a 6.5-point dog to Auburn.
Yeah, see. Like double digits, though, they're not going.
No, but a 3-5 Auburn team, and we know their stats are weird, but they're a 3-5 Auburn team. They're 6.5-point dogs. That's the 3-5 Auburn team.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Actually, I guess you're right about that. Is that at Auburn though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be. So it's home field. That's what it. That's got to be what it is. I'll take Vanderbilt though. I'll take Vanderbilt to win that game.
Yeah,
I will. I didn't even watch a lot of Auburn, but there's a reason that if Auburn shouldn't be. All the stats say Auburn should be better than that. Were they a 2-win team? 2 wins?
3 wins. 3 wins.
3 wins. 3 wins. They should be better than a 3-win team. The stats say that, and maybe they're about to turn the tables right now a little bit in their season. But man, Vanderbilt, I like Diego Pavia. He made some plays against that Texas defense, and not a lot of quarterbacks were able to make plays against that Texas defense. So I think they're gonna have some issues trying to corral Diego Pavia, and I do like that. I do like what I saw from their defense. Their defense they made more plays than I thought. I mean, I think I had them getting maybe a sack. I said I think they'll get 1 sack in that game against Texas. Hell, they got 4 of them. Got 2 takeaways in that game. I know Texas didn't necessarily force the issue with the deep ball, but they made some plays, and they covered up the Texas receivers when they tried to go vertical a lot of the times. There was that DeAndre Moore one, but Texas didn't have a lot of passes down the field. I think that was intentional by them. They were going to give up the underneath and see if they could make some plays on 3rd down, if they can get Texas in 3rd and long, which happened a few times, and they end up making some plays there. So like I said, their defense is better than I thought. I thought Texas would score in the 30s or mid to high 30s, and they didn't make it there because their defense made enough plays. So I'll take Vandy. I'm rooting for Vandy the rest of the season. I think that's a good football team. All right, another what the facts, what the stats here. I know we're up against it, so you know what? We'll head to the break, and I'll get to this stat because it's a Texas football related stat. We'll get to this one on the other side. We get back to reviewing Texas win over Vanderbilt. We'll do that. Also, we'll get into Rod's rant, also, which was a Texas football related one. We got Behind the Burnt Orange Curtain coming up next hour. That will be some sound we're going to hear from Steve Sarkisian. So we're going to dive deep into Texas football on the other side. Also got some NFL news notes and nuggets that we'll share later on. We'll get back to Cowboys and Texans discussion. We'll talk a little bit about the Aggies, who are the last team to be undefeated in SEC play, so they control their own fate. I don't think a lot of people thought we'd be here. We'll hear from their head coach as well. All of that and more right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a Monday Fun Day edition of the Rodcast, but also a Smooth Soul Monday. That's when Patrick Davis, my co-host, the Idealionaire on the show, he comes up with all the musically themed days of the week. But the purpose of a Smooth Soul Monday is to soothe the tortured soul of sports fans who might have had a tough weekend. Yes, Cowboys fans, we're talking about you. We'll get back to some Cowboys conversation. But also in order to make sure that you have a smooth transition from the fun-filled, stress-free, relaxing weekend, hopefully that was the case for you, to the very stressful, hectic work week. He wants to ease you into that transition and make it as smooth as possible. That's the purpose of a Smooth Soul Monday. So we appreciate Patrick hooking us up there. He also hooks us up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day, which is already posted now on X. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll of the day?
Big fat poll today. Who was the MVP for the Longhorns this weekend against Vanderbilt? We gave you 4 options. Feel free to type another one in there in the text line or on the poll as well on X. But we gave you Quinn Ewers, Trey Wisner, Michael Taft, and DeAndre Moore. Right now, Michael Taft, as expected, leading the way with 46%.
Taft Daddy.
DeAndre Moore is at 24%, and Ewers and Trey Wisner both tied at 15%.
Yeah, Trey Wisner did have a good game, over 100 yards from scrimmage for him, and I thought Quinn had a good game too. Other than the tipped interceptions and the sacks, that's not all on Quinn. But I thought he had a good bounce back performance as well. So I picked Taft Daddy, best game we've ever seen him play, and considering that was on the road against a ranked opponent, 2 of your other starting caliber safeties out. Between he and Jelani McDonald. And Jelani McDonald probably could have been on that list. He had a hell of a game too. I thought they might have had the best performance from a safety duo all season long. I mean, they were in that kind of conversation. That's nothing against Makuba and how Derek Williams has played. That's just how well that group, that duo played together. Jelani McDonald had 7 tackles, 4 defensive stops, had 3 run stops. He had 0 missed tackles. And of course, Taft Daddy with the forced fumble, the interception. He had a PBU in the red zone, 6 tackles. He did have that holding call at one point that was called on Malik Muhammad, but it was actually on Michael Taft. But otherwise, he damn near played close to a perfect game. It was one of the best games we've ever seen him play. But I'll go with Taft Daddy on that one, even though, like I said, Trey Wisner, good game. DeAndre Moore, great game, 2 touchdowns. When Isaiah Bond, your leading receivers, out, he gets 2 touchdowns, and I love the play he scored on the slot fade. Can we have that audio ready of DeAndre Moore? He was sitting with David Bender, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and they were doing the post game. And I love the description, everything. So on that the slot fade touchdown for DeAndre Moore, he apparently was checked on that play. His route was audibled and changed by Quinn mid-play. Like while he is motioning across the formation, while he crosses the face of Quinn, you can see when you watch the film that Quinn says something to him. And apparently we know now he was checking the play to that slot fade, which ended up being a touchdown. That is a next level play by Quinn. Here's the description by DeAndre Moore.
So the first one, I was motioning over, and Quinn changed the play mid motion. He told me another play, so I'm like, okay, bet it's man. We see it. Let's go get it. And he just called a slot fade, and he put it up there, allowed me to go, make a play.
DeAndre, does Quinn do that a lot? Mid motion change the play. I mean, it's one thing to audible in auto or at the line, but mid motion, does that happen?
He has the ability to do that, especially in this offense. Quinn is the president, so if he sees a look that he may not like, he can change it to something else just like that.
Quinn is the president. He's the executive of the offense. That is your hope, though, if you're a coach, that your quarterback learns the offense and knows it as well, if not better than you. I still remember talking to Tom Herman when Sam Ehlinger was entering his 3rd year in that system as a starter, and Tom Herman saying he knows the offense just as well as I do. He knows it as well, if not better than me. He can make modifications and suggest things to me about the offense that I didn't didn't foresee, he didn't think about, and Sam would bring him ideas, and you go, oh, you know what, that actually is a more efficient way to run that concept. We should do it that way. That's what you want. And I don't know if Quinn's there with Sark, but he does have the ability to make those types of checks and audibles within the play. And that was, like I said, that's next level. That's what NFL scouts want to see. They want to see a quarterback that can be an executive on field. We talk about game managing and how some quarterbacks look at being a game manager as some negative, like as a negative stereotype. Like it's almost a quarterback slur. I'm not a game manager. I don't manage the game. When the truth is, every quarterback has to learn how to manage a game. You may not be a game manager. Nobody wants to be a game manager, but you got to learn how to manage a game. Right? At one point, you have to, because it's just to me a step. It's a step that all quarterbacks must take. It's a stage in your development as a player, and every quarterback at one point has to become a game manager, learn how to manage a game, and then you transcend that and turn into a signal caller. Maybe it's the next step. And after being a signal caller, you can become an executive, a game executive, where you can check plays and call plays at the line of scrimmage. You know the playbook so well. You know what play would work against that defensive front or against that coverage best, so you can check it at the line of scrimmage, and you know what plays are available to you based on that formation, based on the personnel grouping that's on the field. Like, that's truly a game executive. And Quinn should be there. We should be there. I think the frustration for Longhorn fans is that you saw a regression and it looked like that wasn't the Quinn, or he wasn't capable of that in the game versus Georgia, or sometimes in that Oklahoma game. This is where a third-year starting quarterback should be. They should be an executive in the system. And is Quinn an executive in the system? I think he is. The question is, at this point for Quinn, are we going to continue to see Quinn get better week to week? Because if he had gotten better from that Michigan game, where he had played one of the best games I've ever seen him play, and I know the injury is a big part of it, so I'm not saying that there's not a reason for the regression. But if he continues now, because he looks healthier, and I think he looks like he can throw the deep ball a little bit better, and maybe with another week off to bye week, that he gets even healthier. And if you can get Quinn back as healthy as as close to he was at the Michigan game, I think you'll get that version of Quinn. You'll start trending toward that version of Quinn. And but listen, the issue with Quinn, guys, I point this out in the offseason. What I tell you guys, the biggest issue with Quinn was going to be this season. I know you guys remember, because I went over it like 4 or 5 times. It was going to be how he handles pressure numbers, his pressure to sack numbers, his pressure to sack ratio. That's what NFL scouts want to see from Quinn. How does he handle the pressure? Because there was a mixed sample. They couldn't decide if he handled pressure well or if he panicked under pressure. If you go look at all of his metrics under pressure, these are the same ones I broke out this offseason. So I went back and found my notes. That's why I keep all my notes. Keeps me from having to do a lot of extra work. Pressure to sack numbers for Quinn in 2022, he was at 13.9 pressure to sack percentage, which is pretty damn good. But in 2023, it was over 25% pressure to sack percentage. Which Quinn is it? The one who handles pressure well, or the one who panics a little bit more under pressure? His allowed pressure percentage in 2022, 14%. In 2023, 22%. Which one is it? Which Quinn are we dealing with? Pro Football Focus numbers, pressure to sack percentage, and they have them in 2022. When not blitz, his pressure to sack percentage was 9.5, but when blitz, it rose to 20%. And that was in 2022. If you go look at it, his Pro Football Focus pressure to sack numbers in 2023 was when not blitz, when blitz 23.8%. So it was all about his sack rate versus pressure in 2023 was hovering around, according to Sports Info Solutions, hovering around 30%. So it was always about, okay, so which Quinn is it? Is it the Quinn that handles pressure really well, or the Quinn that doesn't panic under pressure, or the Quinn that panics under pressure? And this season, we've seen both. Remember, I was like, this season, they'll finally get some clarity Which Quinn is it? The Quinn that panics under pressure, or the Quinn that knows how to deal with pressure and knows how to mitigate the damage with pressure? Yeah, you may not be able to, make crisp throws under pressure, but at least you won't make the big mistake. At least you won't make there won't be the big turnover. You can get rid of the football, so it's not the big sack, or you can get rid of the football to a hot route. It's not, so a big gain, but it's a 3 or 4 yard gain instead of a 3 or 4 yard loss. Right? There's some quarterbacks who are just much better at making decisions under pressure. And the question was for Quinn, okay, so how is he going to be in 2024? Third year starting quarterback in that system when teams apply pressure to him. And like I said, against Michigan, he had a higher Pro Football Focus grade under pressure than he did from a clean pocket. It was magnifico. Chef's kiss. It was great. That was, and all the NFL scouts were watching and going, this is an NFL caliber defense with 4 or 5 NFL guys on it, and an NFL caliber defensive coordinator on the road. Quinn knows how to handle pressure. Boom. He figured it out. Done. And what happened? He wrote the odds of him being drafted number 1. They increased. The odds of him winning the Heisman, they increased. Maybe leapfrogged Shadur and for the odds to be the number 1 overall pick, to be the top quarterback taken. It was all working out well because that was the question that scouts wanted to answer. Now, after the injury and then the regression, well, now how does he handle pressure? Right, it didn't handle it well versus Georgia. How did he handle pressure versus Vanderbilt? I thought he was okay, but under pressure, I'll admit, that's where Vanderbilt made all their plays. Is when they applied pressure. And that's why they decided to blitz him at a higher rate than he had been blitzed all season, because they felt, you know what, I don't know if he handles the pressure really well. And they end up, having the tip passes. Even Sark said that's not really his fault, but it is a result of the pressure. So not his fault, but it is your responsibility. You're a quarterback. You get all the girls and you get all the grief. That's a part of handling pressure. And then the sacks. It was sacked 4 times. That's not all on him. There's a lot of that's on the offensive line, but still, not your fault, but your responsibility as a quarterback. That's part of it. How you handle pressure. So I think now going forward, NFL scouts want to know, number 1, what's he going to do when teams apply pressure? And I think you'll get more teams applying pressure. And when he was blitzed in this game, because they blitzed him at a higher rate than he had been blitzed all year. As Pro Football Focus has it at 52% blitz rate. That's pretty high. But they got him at 78% completion percentage versus the blitz. They got him with ultimately, here it says, versus the blitz, they got 8. He was under pressure 8 times, 2.3 average depth of target, 2.1 average time to throw. He got the ball out really quickly when he was being blitzed. They got 17 total pressures, but like I said, only 8 of those came via the blitz, and his pressure to sack rate, almost 24%. When being blitzed. 3 sacks came on blitzes for Quinn, and of course the 2 tipped interceptions also came on blitzes. So it still a mixed bag. I still don't think we know how Quinn handles pressure. I don't know if he could handle it well. That was that Gunnar Helm 23 yarder over the middle or whatever. It was 24 yarder catch and run over the middle. He was being blitzed on that. That was like a 6-man all out 0 blitz on that one. On the DeAndre Moore wheel route quick throw, that touchdown, that actually was a blitz on that one. I want to say the Matthew Golden first touchdown. I want to say they blitz on that one, if I'm not mistaken. I got to go back and check it out. But he made some great throws when he was being blitzed. He really did. He had 2 touchdowns when he was being blitzed. He made some really good throws. But then when you're blitzing, it's just a gamble. All I need is to pay off once or twice. I don't need to pay off every time. You're gambling. I mean, so it's like, hey, if I hit once, it makes my whole night of misery worth it. Just gambling. If I hit one time, especially if it's a strip sack, fumble, or a tip pass, interception, doesn't it just make you want to gamble more? That one time you hit, it's like, okay, all right, you know what? I forgot all about the 10 times that I missed on them when I was gambling, but you know what? I hit that one time and it was money. I got a strip sack, interception, return for a fumble, whatever. That's what the defense was doing. That's what Vanderbilt's defense was doing. That's what their defensive coordinator was doing. And I think you'll get more teams that are going to take that approach versus Texas. Yeah, you're going to lose, but how often can you hit when you gamble against Texas? So blitz rates, they're going to continue to be high because it's a mixed bag right now what you get from Quinn. Do you get panic Quinn or do you get, cool, calm, and collected Quinn? when he's under pressure? We don't know because I saw him in the game. I saw both. I saw the Quinn under pressure. He made some great throws. I was like, that. Remember the Silas Bowden 3rd and 20? He's under pressure there. Moves around the pocket. Delivers a strike on the money. I was like, that's NFL. That guy looked like he could get drafted in the first round. And then you see other plays where he panics a little bit under the pressure.
Yeah.
And every quarterback is less effective under pressure. Some of them just mitigate the damage better. And I think for Quinn, that's going to be his challenge. Mitigate the damage. Even if it is throwing it away real quickly or being able to identify where the cornerback blitz is coming from, pre-snap, hit the hot route, whatever it is, he's got to start mitigating the damage because there's too much damage now when teams are starting to blitz you and put pressure on you. There's too many big splash plays for the defense in that regard.
No, and it's a lot of it for me is that when you're off schedule, you can't compound it. And they get off schedule with a penalty or just a bad play or whatever. And then that's when you see Quinn start to panic a little bit more because things are not going to plan. And that's when the defense can kind of pin their ears back and go, it's 3rd and 12. We can go after Quinn right now. And he's thinking, I have to make this pass, and it has to be at the line. It has to be this versus a 3rd and 7, but you're on schedule because you didn't move backwards at all. You just didn't maybe had an incompletion, a 3-yard run, 3rd and 7. You feel okay about that. Yep. But if you had a big run that got called back, and now you feel off schedule, now you feel like things are going the wrong way. That's when it feels like Quinn gets a little bit more caught up in those moments of not necessarily being the guy to put his head down and just go, no, same play as it always is. Doesn't matter what the last play was. You just do this play. It feels like sometimes when they get off schedule is when he really starts to struggle a little bit more. But that was kind of the second half was they were just off schedule a lot in the second half.
You're right about that. I agree with you. And we don't want Quinn off schedule. We don't want Quinn off schedule. I don't want off schedule Quinn. I want on schedule Quinn, in rhythm Quinn, and I'll give Sark credit. That's what Sark did. That was the game plan. Yeah. And if you're completing 17 passes in a row at one point, I know we'll get into it. Longwood fans would like to see more of a vertical element in the offense, but he definitely got Quinn in the rhythm. He definitely got him confident, and he definitely kept him on schedule early on in the game. Later on in the game, that changed. But the script, if you're looking at the opening script, that was the intention. That was the emphasis. The priority was, let's get Quinn going. And it worked. They got Quinn going, and he looked good to me early in the game, other than, like I said, those few plays. We're basically talking about 6 plays here. We're talking about 5-6 plays for Quinn, which is, by the way, not all his fault because he's not wholly responsible for pass protection, where he looked a little panicked under pressure, and it led to a big play, a splash play for the defense. And if you cut out maybe 2 of those plays, hell, you probably blow out Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
2 of those sacks, you know what I mean? 1 less interception, you cut out, man, that'd probably blow them out. You blow them out probably about 3 touchdowns. But that's how small the margin for error was with that Texas offense. And things kind of flipped on them in the second half. Okay, let's hit the Horn headlines first, then we'll come back and I'll give you more of my thoughts about the Texas win over Vanderbilt. We'll get into that. Also, we got the Behind the Burnt Orange Curtain segment coming up next segment. We'll hear from Steve Sarkisian. But first, let's get updated. Let's get educated. Let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and the Horn headlines.
All right, your Horn headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Spurs got a 109-106 win over the Rockets on Saturday. Victor Wembanyama had 29 points and held Alperen Sengun to only 6 points for the Rockets. The Mavericks dropped the game to the Suns, 114-102. Luka Doncic still had 40 points in the loss, but a 31-point night for Kevin Durant got Phoenix the win. Tonight, the Rockets and Spurs face off again, and the Mavs take on the Jazz. In the World Series, the Dodgers took a 2-0 series lead with late heroics on Friday with a Freddie Freeman walk-off grand slam, then a solid 4-2 win on Saturday. The series now shifts to New York with the Yankees hoping to get back in it with Clark Schmidt on the mound going against Walker Buehler. In college football, Texas picked up a 27-24 win over Vanderbilt on the road, holding on after an underwhelming second-half performance. Ohio State survived a scare against Nebraska, winning 21-17, while Oregon maintained their number 1 ranking with a dominant 38-9 win over Illinois. And Texas A&M rode a big second half to a 38-23 win over LSU to remain the only unbeaten team in SEC play. Texas falls to number 6 in the latest AP poll. And in the NFL, the Texans picked up a big division win over the Colts after almost giving the game away on a late fumble. Joe Mixon ran for 102 yards in the game, but the Texans will wait to hear about the status of Stephon Diggs after exiting the game after a non-contact injury. And the Cowboys fell just short to the 49ers, 30-24, after fighting back in the fourth quarter. Tonight, the Giants take on the Steelers on Monday Night Football, and that is your Horn Headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn Headlines. I appreciate those. All right, let's hit a couple more items about the win for the Longhorns over the Vanderbilt Commodores. Of course, a lot of Longhorn fans are, they're upset about the performance of the offensive line. And I think, to me, that's, if you want to start with, places that Texas needs to improve, areas they need to address. I think in the bye week, if I'm ranking them, offensive line is probably my top priority, because if anything's gonna boost and juice your run game, it's gonna be the O-line.
Mm-hmm.
And the main source of your pass protection, or the main issue with your pass protection, starts with the O-line. So it's your O-line right now that you really need to figure out. And like I said, I think it's both pass protection and in the run game, and a lot of your penalties are coming from that O-line. All right. So bye week emphasis, O-line improvement, execution, pass protection, getting a push in the run game. I think it comes back to that group. And then my next emphasis probably would be in the bye week for the Longhorns. I probably would go penalties all around, but I said most of that's on the O-line. I think you can bring in officials during practice to help with that. You can make video cut-ups of the new SEC's interpretation of holding. So basically all from this season, what they consider holding. These are the plays that they don't consider holding. So this is something that this technique you could use. Whatever, they consider to be holding, their interpretation of it, you need to change and adapt, right, as a player, to whatever their new legal standard is for holding. So I think those are two things you could do. So they got to get the penalties. You got 18 penalties in the last 2 games. That's something you got to figure out. That's uncharacteristic of the Sark team. That hasn't been an issue, I don't think, with Sark that we have seen as a systemic issue. But in the last 2 games, it's really become problematic. So to me, the last 2 games, your pass protection is problematic because you've allowed 11 sacks in the last 2 games. You got 18 penalties in the last 2 games.
Yeah.
Those are things you got to get fixed right now.
No, I mean, you have to improve communication. You got to improve. I mean, just this is a veteran group of guys. Mm-hmm. This is a guys with experience. They should be able to take the criticism at this point and learn to grow with it. It's not something where you're talking about, like the running backs, where you can look at and go, yeah, they need to make some improvements. The running backs are a part of that pass protection, that they're missing things.
They are.
There's, I mean, you see too many times, you see a running back standing behind 4 offensive linemen, and then another guy's just coming. Mm-hmm. You're like, I get you're helping them out, but there's somebody right there. You really need to be the last line of defense, and you're not even on the right side. So they need to be part of that as well, but you don't blame them as much because they weren't supposed to be playing the amount of snaps they're playing. So over the whole offseason and everything, they weren't really ready to be at that place. They're not supposed to be that guy. Now, they need to keep improving. That's part of it you still have to work on during this week, is just pass pro from that. I mean, Gunnar Helm, you go, you've improved in so many things, but it's still due for like 1 holding penalty a game.
Yeah, and that was a terrible call.
They're not always good calls, but he gets one a game.
That doesn't matter. Yeah,
matter. I get that. Like he has a problem because he's blocking smaller guys a lot of times. He's blocking guys on the outside, and his arms get to the outside just because he's wider than them. And it's like, I get that that's just a hard thing for you to do because you're not really trying to hold or anything else. Your arms just kind of go out because they're smaller guys, but they're going to call that. And a couple of times he's blocked guys to the ground, and just because the guy went down, they called a holding. You're like, he didn't grab him ever. It's just stuff like
That's
that. It's happened a couple times in these games. So you just have to work on that with everybody. But it starts with the O-line, that if they're doing their job right and communicating correctly, you can nip a lot of it in the bud.
Yeah. I think the O-line's got like I said, some people will throw out there Quinn, because I think Quinn had a really nice bounce back performance. What we did not expect is for the offensive line to come off their worst performance that we've seen under Sark, and then have another performance that is also, it's not equally as bad, but still disappointing the very next week. And, ultimately I said this earlier, you got to give Vanderbilt some props. But what Vanderbilt was able to do defensively, they basically learned a lot of good lessons from watching that Georgia film. And they were able to extract a few concepts from that Georgia film that they thought they could execute. And I think the three that stood out the most to me that really had the most impact, the A-gap blitzes, the cornerback blitzes, and the delayed blitzers, the delayed rushers. And that's something that you saw a lot of with Georgia. You saw everything with Georgia. Georgia basically, it was a master class on how to put together very sophisticated pressure packages, exotic pressure packages, and they pressure Texas every which way that you could. 3-man rush, 4-man rush, all-out blitz, zero blitz, 5-man blitz, cornerback blitz, you name it, right? That's not what Vandy did. Vandy took specific concepts that they thought would work based on, their game plan and their strategy. And the cornerback blitz was probably the most impactful and successful out of the 2 tipped interceptions and the 4 sacks. 4 of the 6 involved the cornerback blitz, slot cornerback blitz or a cornerback blitz. 2 of the 6 involved an A-gap blitz. So basically 5 of the 6 involved those 2 concepts. All right, a cornerback blitz and or an A-gap blitz. That is not a coincidence. All right, that was, and they blitzed at a higher rate than anybody who had faced Texas. So what they figured out was, we need to create chaos and we need to produce panic in Quinn and create chaos within the Sark system, and it worked out really well for them. They were just gambling. Like I said, that those tip passes that could have fell on the ground in next play. Or Quinn could have got it right over his hands. You see that Diego Pavia throw, the touchdown? The one he threaded the needle through, that LaFau tipped. If he didn't tip it, Jelani McDonald would intercept it. So LaFau tipped it. So Jelani McDonald misjudged it because it got tipped. Went past him, went past 3 different Longhorn defenders. By the way, a great catch by the Vanderbilt guy, because he tipped it to himself. One hand tipped to himself to end up cradling it. Guys, there's a lot of luck involved there. And there's a lot of bad luck involved with Quinn's tip passes, interceptions. A lot of good strategy and a lot of skill as well. The D lineman, once it was tipped, the D lineman waited on it. It's a good play by him. But my point is that ball could bounce all types of ways. When it's tipped into the air, there's no telling if it's going to go straight up or if it's going to go right back into Quinn's face or if it's going to go straight down to the ground. Nobody knows how that oblong ball is going to bounce. But you got to give him credit for the strategy. Got to give him credit for the tactics, which was, let's just blitz. Let's blitz. And let's blitz these specific ways. And they probably also added, hey, this guy throws off platform a lot. He likes weird arm angles. His release point is not always really high. It's not always a high release and launch point. If you get your hands up, you got a chance to tip it now. You got a good chance. You ain't going to get there because getting the ball out quickly, you got a chance to tip it. So all of that's good coaching. That's good strategy, good tactics. But in terms of the ball bouncing, nobody really controls that. And it bounced their way. You make your own luck. So give Vandy a lot of credit. That was, just watching the film and rewatching it, that was damn good coaching by them. Good coaching. Texas still should have been able to blow this team out. They had a chance to, by the way, to blow this thing wide open. When Moore scores that first touchdown, the one that Quinn audible to, right? That was the first touchdown, the one he audible to. Guys, that offense is rolling. Like, Texas is rolling a little bit. They're starting to feel good about it. Your defense gets you an interception. You get the ball right back, and you have your 4th drive of the game with the offensive line. Basically screwed this drive up. That 4th drive of the game, you were moving the football, but then Cam Williams gets you an unsportsmanlike conduct that backs you up to 2nd and long. You overcome that 2nd and 16 with a 16-yard completion to Jaden Blue, And then later on, you get a Kelvin Banks holding, put you behind the chains again, and then you give up a sack on that drive. And that drive, so the O-line just killed that drive. You would have scored some points on the drive. O-line killed it. But then you punted. Your defense forces a 3 and out. So your defense went interception, then forced a 3 and out, got you the ball back. You scored another touchdown. You scored a touchdown right there. That made it 21-7. Now you're you were really close to blowing this open. That Sark run we always talk about. The D forces a fumble, get you the ball back again. That's 3 consecutive drives. Defense got you an interception, a 3 and out, and a forced fumble, just giving you the ball right back. And then, unfortunately, for Texas, they get a 3 and out, and they have a bad punt, 23-yard punt. By the way, punting for Texas? Well, I'm thinking about it. Texas is 15th out of 16 teams in punting in the SEC, in punting average. If you look at the 20 punters that have punted in the SEC so far this season, Texas punters are 19th and 20 in net average. They're 98th in the country in punting average. We missed those gunners. I think Texas misses those gunners from last year.
Yeah. No, and I think
and
Kern had a better
Robinson.
game than, I can't remember who the other kid. He did better on some of them because he could pin him back a little bit more.
Yep.
But he doesn't necessarily have the leg of a super booming punt. So he's better if you have decent field position, you can pin him back. Where last week that wasn't even a case. You were kicking through the end zone still. Even when you're at your 40-yard line or 50-yard line, you're kicking the end zone. So he can do that better. But yeah, and then he had that one awful punt. That really hurt.
That's what I'm talking about. That's a 23-yarder.
Yeah.
That was right before the half. And you basically gave them 3 points because they got the ball back at like the 35.
Yeah.
And they just had to drive, I think like 10 yards, and they were basically in field goal range. So that was your chance to blow them out. You missed it because your defense gave you interception, 3 and out, forced fumble, 3 and out. Your defense hooked you up, but you never took advantage of those opportunities. You did score 1 touchdown in there, but you had you had that 3 and out. You had another 3 and out. You just didn't take advantage of it. And if you would have, I think it should have been like 27-7 or 31-7 at half. And then after half, you would have scored a field goal. And after another 3 and out, your defense got you. And then you'd think about by that time, you'd have been up, like I said, 34-7 or 31-7, whatever it may be. And instead, you ended up kind of in a dogfight. So you missed your chance for the Sark run, is my point.
Am I wrong that in the last 2 weeks, they've only got 1 touchdown off points off of turnovers, which was that one third quarter interception by Jahdae Barron against Georgia?
I want to say they got 10 points off of turnovers.
10 points last week?
Georgia. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe they got a field goal. But they're just not taking advantage of those turnovers.
No.
Really. So it's a weird thing of when I say on schedule and off schedule, that feels like it's another thing where they're like not expecting it. So it's not on schedule for them in the same sense. Yeah. Like it just had to be, I don't know. It's just this weird thing of like, just go out there and play. Like, just doesn't matter what happened. Just go play football and you'd be fine.
I think you're right though about the points off turnovers. Cause you don't count turnovers on downs. We don't count those.
No.
Yeah, because I think this week, I'm not sure they got any points.
I don't think they did. I mean, you just mentioned the interception they didn't, the forced fumble they didn't.
The fumble they didn't, and then late in the game, the other interception. Oh, yeah.
They scored on that one?
No. Well, they brought that one back, though, didn't they? The one I'm thinking about.
Oh,
Kobe back one. But there's a LaFau one, the LaFau interception.
Yeah. I'll have to go look.
I had to go look and see if they scored off there. But remember, in the second half, guys, they only scored in the second half. They scored that field goal late. But other than that field goal, they had a field goal early and a field goal late. Those were the only times they scored. Their last 4 drives in the second half were interception, 8 plays, 13 yards, punt, 7 plays, 16 yards, punt, and that 7-play, 24-yard drive, they ended up in a field goal. I think that was the last 4 drive. And then they had the kneel down. So I take out the kneel down drive. All right, there you go. So we'll talk more about this. We'll hear from Sark on the other side too. But yeah, Texas, right now they're a flawed team. They got some flaws like every other team around the country. But the defense, we'll hear from Sark talking about that defense. Defense, once again, in my opinion, showed that they are one of the stingiest defenses in Texas football history. Still number one total defense in the country. I think they're second in scoring defense and third in pass defense. And in that game versus Vanderbilt, they were impressive. Don't let the box score fool you. We'll come back and talk about that on the other side right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time here from Steve Sarkisian as we continue to break down Texas versus Vanderbilt. We don't talk enough about how good the defense is. We just don't. When we talk about the Texas team and their glaring deficiencies and flaws, we're talking about the offense and actually talking about some special teams now too. But the defense continues to impress, guys. Once again, just like that Georgia game. I mean, if you look at it, say, look at the score, you'll say, oh man, Texas gave up, 24 points to Vanderbilt. And then if you actually watch the game, you realize Texas only allowed, once again, one drive. That was one drive that was over 38 yards. One scoring drive that was over 38 yards against Vanderbilt. And now in the last two games, you've had 10 scoring drives in the last two games for Texas against Georgia and against Vanderbilt, and only two of them have been over 38 yards. You allowed a 75-yard touchdown drive and an 89-yard touchdown drive the last 2 weeks. Those are the only drives, the only scoring drives you've allowed in the last 2 weeks, 10 of them out of 10 that have actually been longer than 38 yards, which means you're not getting a lot of help. Complementary football is not helping out this defense. The lack thereof is not helping out this defense. So here's Sark talking about the effort from his defense and how well they played versus Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I've been proud of him. The first touchdown today, after the tip ball was unfortunate because I think we were actually in really good position, and we let the quarterback get out and kind of circle us for a touchdown there. But hey, our defense, I think, is defending the run at a really high level, which we thought maybe coming in the year might be where we were a year ago defending the run. But we're stopping the run. I thought it showed up tonight, keeping the quarterback in check. I think that first run he had was an 18-yard run. After that, 15 carries for, not a whole lot of yards. So that was good. Where I've been impressed is what we've been able to do in the back end and our ability to defend the pass, our ability to create turnovers, I think is really starting to elevate itself. And I think we're playing with a lot of confidence. And so, I know we didn't want them to score at the end there to put us in that position. But again, we're off the field. We return the ball for a touchdown. We rough the quarterback. And so could have looked a whole lot different. But in the end, it took all 60 minutes to get the win.
Oh, that was brutal. That roughing the passer by Vernon Broughton at the end. Vernon's been playing great this year too. That was just a dumb play.
Well,
yeah,
and then
it happens.
And then he gets doubled down on it because you get a targeting call.
Yeah, he had a targeting call, so he's out for the first half in this game.
Yeah.
Then he took a pick six off the board, which is as a Kobe
And
Black.
then-
Oh man, pick six off the
And
board.
then he gets hurt
Brutal.
somehow at the end of that. I don't know if that was just cramps or what, but he went down on the field after that.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if his pride was hurt. He was just sad because he hurt his team. I don't know what that was about.
It went downhill so quickly from
Mhm.
okay, game over, pick six to Vernon Broughton's not playing in the first half next game, and
Yeah.
Kobe Black's on the field, and it's Vanderbilt ball first down. You're like,
Yeah, and
what just
Vanderbilt's driving.
happened?
You're like, what?
That
An
was-
emotional swing, man. Just wrecked us. Yeah.
What a huge swing.
You're right about that. I remember that too. That was I don't know what happened to Vernon on that play, but he clearly didn't have to. He leaned into the quarterback on that one. So I actually agreed with that call. I know there was some bad calls. I actually agree with that call. I don't know if it was targeting, but it definitely was roughing the passer. But getting back to it, that first touchdown that Diego Pavia scored, the one, it's a brilliant run by him. Hit and taps the pylon, dives for the pylon. Gilbo had him. I mean, it was they had the right defense called. And Gilbert just let him get outside of him, let him break contain. And once he broke contain, Pavia was determined to get the touchdown. So that was just a play that showed you what Diego Pavia brings to the table as a guy that can color outside the lines and improvise. But other than that, Texas did a good job of just corralling him. He wanted to play some hero ball, but his hero ball really wasn't working. You saw him make some spectacular plays. He's been doing that all year long. But I don't think he ever was able to get in his to get that offense in its element. That offense usually was operating, they want to operate 3 yards in a cloud of dust, stay ahead of the chains. Texas kept them behind the chains a lot, kept them in some third and long situations. They were not able to control the game with their
and there was a play I think was early in with Trey Moore, which I know people wonder why Trey Moore is getting so many snaps.
Yeah.
But there was a play, and if you watch the Vanderbilt Alabama game, they did that twice late in that game, that same play. Twice to Alabama, and both times it destroyed it. It was like a huge play. Both times where he goes and he throws a little pass back, and Trey Moore had it scouted, ready to go, and just stuck his big mid out there and knocked it down to the ground. But plays like that, that's why Trey Moore's in it, because he was playing run defense well. He then defended the pass while playing good run defense. And it's just defending everything properly in there and knowing what to do. That was one of those ones where you see what Trey Moore, why he's so trusted by this team.
Yep, I totally agree with you there. Okay, so the other big issue that Longhorn fans want to hear from Sark on was the tip passes and the sacks. Whose fault is that? How you gonna fix the issue? What does Sark see on the sideline? Here's what Sark had to say about the tip passes and the tip passes and the sacks in that Vanderbilt game.
The first one was an RPO, and I couldn't even really see. It was a blitzing linebacker, I think, that kind of got his hand up. I mean, it's not his fault. It's not anybody's fault. Sometimes that just happens. Balls get tipped. The second one, again, was unfortunate. I think that, you're always try to throw – you never try to throw over people over the middle, but when balls get tipped at the line of scrimmage, you naturally have to throw over people. But I don't fault him for those things. It's really just unfortunate because I thought he played a really good football game tonight and made some really critical throws on third downs for explosive plays. I thought he took advantage throws when he had him on the perimeter, when he had them. Used his legs a couple times effectively. I thought he stepped up beautifully. Had a great one on a third and long conversion to Silas Bolden working up in the pocket. So I know, hey, it's been a long week for him too. And so I was proud of him in the way that he came and attacked this game tonight. And again, I thought he played really well. Had some, like I said, just kind of bad luck with the tips. You know, I got to look at that too. One of them, I felt like we should have been much better for sure. There was another one where we have a miscommunication and the running back doesn't block his man. And that's a little concerning because that's 2 weeks in a row now on third down that's occurred. So again, everybody takes his, has a part in all that. Us as coaches do too. And we have to improve that.
All right, there you go, Coach. I mean, Coach is basically saying, yeah, some bad luck on the tip passes. And it is, like I said, strategy, tactics, and coaching. There is some of that there, but in terms of how the ball lands, I mean, that's largely just bad luck. But Vandy made their own luck in that situation. All right, so that's some Sark sound. We'll get to some more Sark audio later on the show. We come back, we'll get into Off the Record. There's a lot of wild stuff in Off the Record. Matter of fact, there's a Dallas Cowboys player who's upset with a member of the media and the way that he was portrayed. We'll talk about that coming up. We'll also get into some of the other wacky stories from around the sports world from this past weekend. All that and more right here on the Rodcast, featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Davis coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into a little off the record. So apparently Trevon Diggs is upset with a local reporter there who apparently questioned his effort on a play. It was actually, I remember this play too. And I'm not questioning his effort too, but I know the play they're talking about. It was on a long run. I'll get the exactly what point in the game, but I remember it's on long run. He basically questioned whether, Trevon Diggs was giving max effort to try to track down the player. And in the confrontation, it's on video. A couple of F-bombs dropped in the background, so I wasn't sure about whether you wanted to edit and throw it out there. But he confronted the reporter who questioned his effort. And Diggs said, basically, all you got from that whole play was, your criticism of my effort. The reporter, basically, he pushes Trevon Diggs, hey, to answer the question. He'd like to talk about it. Then Trevon Diggs ended the interaction with talk about these nuts. That's how he ended it. He literally ended it. That's how he ended it. I'm not joking. That he ended it with a D's joke. Yeah. So things are starting to unravel for the Cowboys. I mean,
yeah,
and the Cowboys usually like this kind of stuff. I don't know why Trevon Diggs is even worried about the reporter who's questioning his effort. If it's something that, you don't think is a big issue, you don't even have to address it. You just made it a big deal. Now everybody's going to go watch the play. Now everybody's going to go check out the play. Before, nobody would have listened to this dude. He probably would have had some anecdotal comment about it, put some on social media. Few people would have liked it, moved on. You just made it an issue. Now everybody around the country, because I'm sure it's going to be on if it already is, on all the sports shows, and they're going to play your reaction, and then they'll go back and look at the actual play. And now everybody's going to have an opinion about how much effort you gave, or if you gave max effort on the play. It's just like, it's not worth it. He wasn't going to get I don't think he was going to get the result that he wanted by confronting the reporter about that. I think worked for the reporter. The reporter's boss is like, good job, man. It got good reaction on that video, man. Got people gonna be watching the news tonight trending, but does it do anything for Trevon Diggs? No. I get that he's upset, and you can make the argument. Reporter doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. So, who is he to question the effort of a football player, all that kind of stuff. But I think you can only control how you respond to a situation, and Trevon Diggs, that's not the right response. You went viral now, and now everybody's gonna be looking for that same damn play that he's bringing up, and that you obviously you're somewhat, you feel somewhat, emotional about it.
I just can't, and I can't imagine being on social media right after a game like that. I know people do it, but it feels like,
oh yeah,
I wouldn't be checking my name after a loss.
You picked up the phone, man.
After a Texas loss, I don't go I don't go on social, because I'm like, there's gonna be so much hate and vitriol out there. I don't need that in my life. I just need to try and be happy in my own world. So I don't go onto those after, and I'm not in the game, not playing the game, and I stay away from it from right after. I can't imagine walking off the field and be like, well, can't believe we lost that one. Let's go say what people are saying about me.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what must have happened, because he came out to address. Mike Leslie was the name of the reporter from. He's a sports anchor at WFAA, and he's the reporter that was confronted after putting out there on social media, what is Trevon Diggs doing on this play? And it was a play from the third quarter. It was the Kittle catch and run, the long catch and run when it was like 10-6. And that long Kittle catch run that put him down inside the 5-yard line. That was a play. And essentially, he didn't think Diggs was giving max effort on the play. And he saw it and came out to confront him. And like I said, I don't know. Watching the play, I guess he wants him to try to pursue the ball carrier, because it wasn't Trevon Diggs' man.
Yeah.
Trevon Diggs was on somebody else. And he was coming over to try to on a pursuit angle to the football. And so it wasn't his man. And I guess he wants to know, why wasn't he running harder? I think, just me personally, I think he was trying to judge the speed of the ball carrier. Because once you as a defender, you got to first be able to kind of track the speed of the ball carrier. You can make the argument, hey man, you should just sprint at an angle where you think the ball carrier is going to be. You can make that argument. If you do that sometimes, then the ball carrier can just cut back on you. And then you can still be made out to be look kind of stupid. So it looks like to me, just watching it, that Trevon Diggs was trying to track like the speed. What's the speed of Kittle? Is he going to try to cut this back? And then at the end, he ends up like pushing him out of bounds. But I think initially he's like, oh, is he cutting it back? Oh, no, he's not cutting it back. And then he adjusts his speed to try to cut him off and pursue him and try to cut him off before he gets to the end zone. But at first, I can see why it looks like he's loafing. I think he's just trying to see if Kittle's going to cut it back on him. But like I'm not Trevon Diggs, but I'm a DB. Yeah. I remember plays like this as a DB, and it may look like, no, I'm not loafing. Like, I got to make sure I judge the ball carriers because he's running at an angle. And at that angle, I could easily see Kittle cutting it back on him. And Kittle's not an easy guy to bring down. You better have the right angle on him because Kittle will carry you for about 5 yards. He did it early in the game, carried about three Cowboys DBs for about 5 yards. So that's what I think is going on. I'm being, kind of, I'm a DB. So I'm a little biased. I'm taking the DB side here. That maybe it's just not him loafing. I'm going to assume he's not loafing. The game is 10-6 here. I think the game is out of hand. It's 10-6 in the third quarter. I'm going to assume that's not a loaf, that he was just, trying to sum up the speed of the ball carrier and then adjusting his angle. That's what I'm going to throw out there. Because he's in man coverage. So if in zone coverage, you can all eyes on the football, eyes on the quarterback. So you can see guys kind of running downhill, and you have better pursuit angles, more precise pursuit angles in zone than you would in man. Because man, everybody's back is turned to the football. I'm reacting real time, like, oh, what's going on? Oh, hear the crowd. Oh, what's going on? Turn around. Oh man, somebody's got the ball. I got to go, track down the ball carrier. So there is an adjustment, and I feel like the adjustment for Trevon Diggs trying to figure out what the hell was going on off of his man and find the ball carrier, that is the period where Mike Leslie's like, hey, what are you doing right there? And maybe Trevon Diggs like, I'm not going to explain to you that I'm adjusting to the speed of the ball carrier, and I am trying to, accurately, predict and gauge like where he is going to run. Like, is he going to cut it back on me? Or do I need to pursue and over pursue and try to meet him at the goal line? How am I going to adjust my angle? Basically, if I run right at him, there's a chance he cuts it back on me, or there's a chance I end up, because there's another Dallas Cowboys player there too, that is like right in front of him tracking Kittle. And so also sometimes like, well, I don't want this to be the Three Stooges, which happened in that game where you run into your teammate. Yeah. Because you're trying to tackle a guy. So you also want to, I want to adjust to my teammate. If my teammate is going to take away the cutback, then I need to over pursue and I need to take away the angle. But if my teammate's going to take away the angle, well, I'm going to adjust and take away the cutback. So we can't both take the same thing away. Then we both take away the angle to the end zone. Then he cuts it back on both of us. He both look stupid. All right. Then if we both take away the cutback and he just decides, all right, I'm just going to take the angle to the pylon, and we both look stupid. There's like, why didn't y'all just, what are y'all doing? So I think ultimately he was adjusting his own angle, then looking at his teammate to say, okay, what are you going to do? Are you taking away the cutback, or you taking away the angle because whatever you do, I'm going to adjust to you too. That's what I feel like all that's happening within 2-3 seconds. But that's what I interpret. And I could be off. No. Maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about either. But that's what in my situation, I've been in that situation before, and I'm like, I even watch film like, what am I doing? Oh, I see what I'm doing. I'm adjusting to the linebacker who was also on the angle. I could pass him up because I'm faster than a linebacker. But what point is that if we're both cutting off the angle and then he cuts it back on us? Yeah. So I think that's what he's doing. But he didn't want to explain that to Mike Leslie, and I think Mike Leslie's like, hey, explain it to me. But his point is, Mike Leslie, you should have. Why can't you ask me first before you put it out there on Twitter? And what is Trevon doing in this play? You criticized before you wanted to educate yourself. So don't act like now you want to educate yourself, because you don't. Yeah. You wanted the likes and you wanted all that before you wanted to educate yourself.
I've seen enough stuff where you see it and you go, the way this is phrased is solely to incite anger and incite people. That's why you phrase it this way. That's why you ask the question. I get what you're doing, and stop doing that. Because you're only trying to make things worse. You're not trying to. This isn't hey, we need to fix this problem with this team. The idea is, hey, I'm going to make a name off of y'all and screw you guys. Yeah. And so I get it. Yeah. I get why he's upset. There was also one with a fan in the Brooklyn Nets game. They were coming off the court, and all the players are like walking through. And I guess there's this like section where some of the like a few fans, I'm guessing probably, high class, high money fans are gathered, and they're kind of like high fiving and talking players or trying to get autographs or whatever. They were coming off the court, and then one of the kids called Ben Simmons trash.
Oh, I think I saw. I thought that was a joke. That was real.
Dennis Schroeder came back to go yell at him.
Oh, to yell at the kid?
Yeah.
Wow. That's
You can't
Man.
just call somebody like, what are you doing?
You just called them trash. Yeah, you can. You meant to heckle the hecklers, like
Yeah,
you went to heckle the heckler.
just go back and be like, dude, I don't care how much money. Go, you're gone. Like, and so it was.
Yeah.
They just get in your face, and they're like, throw him out. Like,
Yep,
if he's
throw
gonna
him
come
out.
talk trash to us, throw him out.
Yeah, and yeah, just calling them trash too. That's wild. I did not. Oh man, I thought that was like a fake. I thought it was like something fake too. I actually saw that on my timeline. That is crazy. But yeah, I mean, like I said, if you wanna, you in the media, you want to call them out. Hey, you got to be willing to deal with the repercussions of it. And I don't know if he thought Trevon Diggs would care that much. Well, you were wrong. He cared. He cared about it. But now Trevon Diggs, my point is now he's got to explain it to everybody. He's going to have to explain this at one point. Because now everybody wants to know what happened on the play. So my point was either you shouldn't have even addressed it in that manner, or you should have came out there and just explained it to him and kind of make him feel stupid about it. Like, you know what I'm doing here. You want to go out on the field? We should try to do that. We should come out to practice, and then we'll have you be a pursuit defender, and I want to see how you adjust your angles during the game. When you have several players, defenders pursuing a ball carrier, you can't all take the same angle. Like they do a pursuit drill in practice where we all take different angles and you adjust your angle based on your teammate and their angle to the football. And everybody takes a deeper angle. That's literally a drill. And that's what he should say, dude, it's a drill. We all do that. I can't just be running full speed every damn time. Then I'm going to open up, right, running lanes. That's what the point of pursuit is. We cut off the running lanes so that we all pursue at the same different angles, and we adjust those angles so there are no cutback lanes, and so that you can, as a defense as a whole, you can cut off all daylight so they can't see daylight is open space. And so he didn't explain that, and that to me is all I saw. Like I said, I could be off too. All right, we come back. We got Texans and Cowboys discussion. We just had a little Cowboys discussion. We'll have some more. We'll talk about the Cowboys a little bit. Also, we'll get into the Aggies. Yep, we got to talk about the Aggies. I told you guys at one point it would be a hype train when the Aggies were undefeated in SEC play midway through the season. Well, hype train already left the station. Now they are the only team that controls their own fate in the SEC. So maybe the hype train is for real. We'll discuss it on the other side right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis on Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. Welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a Smooth Soul Monday edition of the Rodcast, and that's when Patrick, my co-host, plays jams intended to soothe the tortured soul of sports fans who may have had a really tough weekend. That includes Cowboys fans, who we'll talk about here in just a second. Also, the purpose of Smooth Soul Mondays also is to ease you into the work week. We know you may have had a very relaxing, hope you had a very relaxing, stress-free, fun-filled weekend. Well, hopefully for you guys that was the case, but if not, we know that the work week can be quite challenging no matter how good or bad your weekend was. So in order to ease you into that very stressful, hectic work week with the traffic and the meetings and everything, Patrick makes it a Smooth Soul Monday to make it a smooth transition. So we appreciate him for that. We also appreciate him coming up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day that is already posted at the Horn ATX. Patrick, what is the topic for the big fat poll of the day?
Who was the MVP for Texas against Vanderbilt right now? Michael Taft with the lead with 46% of the vote. DeAndre Moore getting 27%, 15% for Trey Wisner, and 13% for Quinn Ewers. If you have another name, feel free to throw it in on the text line, 512-447-3776, or you can put it up there on X at the Horn ATX.
All right, there you go. Taft Daddy right now leading that vote, and I totally understand why. Best game I've ever seen Michael Taft play, and I've been one of the big advocates, all right, of Michael Taft. I know some people didn't like Taft Daddy a couple of years ago, earning starting reps in that secondary. I said, guys, if you can earn starting reps in the Texas secondary as a walk-on, man, you got something. You got some dog in you, something serious. Now, trust me, the coaches don't want it. They don't want to give reps to walk-ons. They don't. You got to earn those. Trust me, they're doing their best to overlook you and put in other guys on scholarship. And that means you was just showing out. You gave them no choice. Right? They had to put you out there, and I think that's Taft's journey pretty much with Texas. Earned that scholarship, earned his way on the field, earned the starting spot. He just keeps earning it. And somebody asked me the other day, you think he's got a shot to play in the league? I said, he's got a shot. I don't know if he'll get drafted. He'll get into a training camp. And then after then, like he's had to do his entire life, go earn it.
Yeah,
go earn it.
I'll put it this way. I wouldn't count him out at this point.
Exactly. Like I'm not betting against the young man. So go earn it. He's done it. That was a hell of a game that he had, though. I think that was the best game we've seen Taft play. And Jelani McDonald had a great game. I mean, it was phenomenal for his first start on the road versus a top 25 team with a really unconventional, innovative offense. And that dude ends up getting, 7 tackles in the game? Ended up getting 7 tackles, 4 defensive stops. He had 3 run stops. He had a tackle for loss. He ran the alley so damn well, ended up stopping a running back for a loss. I think he had one catch on him by Stowers. I think Stowers got a first down catch on him. Stowers, he might be the best tight end in the SEC. I mean, it's gonna be a first or a second team all SEC tight end. If he's not first team, then Gunnar Helm is gonna be in it. If he's not, if Gunnar Helm is, second team, it's because that dude is first team. That's the only guy I think that's gonna be voted over Gunnar Helm as the all SEC tight end. But anyway, getting back to it, defense played really well. I'll give it to Taft. I think Taft just had an amazing game. And they had a PBU broken up in the end zone. And even Diego Pavia said after the game, he said 16. He was like basically surprised that 16 was a walk-on. And he literally pointed out, or at least he mentioned 16 by number. He didn't say his name. He just said 16 by number, which is a great, that's a great compliment in itself. I mean, Nick Saban used to do that. When Nick Saban would talk about players when he was getting ready to play Texas in that first national game, he referred all the guys by their numbers. He's like, oh, man, you got to watch out for 84. Ooh, man, watch out for 25. And it was like, man, but he's watching film. It actually, in my opinion, it's more of a compliment because he's not doing background on you. He ain't looking at your stats. He ain't looking at it. He's literally just watching film and going, I'm watching film. Let the film tell me if he's a good player or not. I don't need to look at the stats. I don't want to look at a highlight reel of all your best plays. I'm going to watch you out there play by play, and I'm going to say, man, 16's a dude. 16's a baller. He can play. That's how we used to watch it. As I didn't keep up with a lot of stats when you were playing. You don't keep up with a lot of stats. Keep up with your own stats. You don't keep up with a ton of stats for the teams. You just kind of watch the film and go, all right, 16, he's going to be a problem. And that is kind of how I saw it, Pavia. You can tell, like, he was just from the game and just seeing Taft all over the place. Like, man, 16 again. Damn, he made another play. Don't even. I mean, you could say it's disrespectful not to call him by his name. I think in the football world, it's more of a compliment. Like, nah, man, it's just 16. Dude made an impression on me to the point I just know his number, and it's now like cemented. It's right. It's singed in my memory now that he's a dude. So good for Diego Pavi for giving some props to Michael Taft too. All right, let's get to some NFL news, notes, and nuggets. Before we do that, though, let's get the Horn headlines. Then we'll come back and talk Cowboys. We'll talk Texans. I feel like we tried to tell you that result was going to happen. I feel like we tried. Because man, we wanted to pick the Cowboys. Tried to give you guys every possible reason to pick the Cowboys because of the bye week and all the injuries for the 49ers. And the 49ers have been struggling, and it didn't matter. We still couldn't do it. Patrick and I said even after all of the information, all of the the reports that we were going through about injury reports and who's going to play for the Cowboys and who's going to play for the 49ers. In the end, I just couldn't pick the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy over the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan, and I was right. They flipped the switch on them. They flipped the championship switch. Cowboys don't have that. Cowboys don't have a championship switch. You can't flip it. No. We've seen this year 49ers do it. We've seen the Kansas City Chiefs do it. They did it again. Well, they played the Raiders this week. Well, they beat them by one score. They beat everybody by one score.
They beat everybody by one score. Patrick Mahomes having his worst season of his career.
Horrible.
Still leading MVP voting, and he's leading. He's like, come on, man.
Just flipping the switch on you, man. They're like, all right, flip the switch. Was it fourth quarter? Flip the switch. The Cowboys don't have that because they don't have championship DNA. They don't have a championship. I mean, Kirby Smart and Georgia flipped the switch on Texas. It's okay. Yeah. I think Texas, it was good for them to see what a championship level team played at. But man, for the Cowboys, that's my concern. They can never measure up to that the 49er standard now, which is, they've competed for multiple Super Bowls in different iterations. All right. Reinventing themselves multiple times since the Cowboys last went to a Super Bowl. Isn't that crazy? They've been right. They've done it with the Colin Kaepernick. They did it with that one, and they did it again now with the Shanahan regime. They haven't won it. I'll give you that. But that's what the Cowboys are chasing. Because the Cowboys and all of their reinventions, they haven't. I can't say they come close. They came close like once or twice there. But the 49ers, they've been able to successfully reinvent themselves to be a champion, a true championship contender. And I think that's the struggle for the Cowboys. How do you do that? And even when it is, I think the 49ers might be at the end of their run here. This might be the last year they can really try to do it without, they got to pay Purdy. After you pay Purdy, and you got to kind of blow up the team, but they're so good at drafting and everything. I think they'll still be okay. But yeah, the Cowboys, the lesson to learn from the 49ers is how do you successfully reinvent yourself and keep your championship window open? And the Cowboys, and most of the time it centers around, finding the right quarterback. That's a big part of it. But that to me is a lesson the Cowboys need to learn from the 49ers, that we talking about a decade. That was a cultural win for the 49ers over the Cowboys. They just proved they're a better culture than the Cowboys, better pedigree overall as a football franchise. And that was the disparity. That's the difference. That's what I saw in the second half. That's what the 49ers really pulled away. They made their second half adjustments because they got better coaching. All right, made the adjustments and the modifications, and the players responded because the players have championship pride, and they responded with that kind of, with that pride, and they played to a certain standard. And yes, the 49ers, like they have done this year, now this is also, I think, part of the Kyle Shanahan, maybe that's his this flawed blueprint, or I think it's one of his characteristics too. He will give up a lead.
Yep.
I don't know what it is. I'll admit it. One of my best friends in the world, I love the guy to death. He will give up a lead. It's something about his teams. They can have a lead and they can have control over a game, and somehow they relinquish it. I don't know if it relaxes, but it happens. It's happened with multiple Shanahan teams in Super Bowls. We've seen it happen in playoff games with the Shanahan clan, and we see this season he's happened twice. He's had a double-digit lead and end up losing the game. And he's had a double-digit lead and almost lost on other occasions. Actually, on two other occasions, because he almost lost this game too, when the Cowboys started coming back by Dak and CeeDee Lamb bringing back life to the offense and bringing back life to the Cowboys. I don't know what that is about Shanahan's blueprint. You would think a team that runs the ball as well they do, they just run a team out. They just run the clock out. They just choke the life out of the clock, but they don't. He threw it on like 2nd and 3 one time. I was like, what are you doing? Why are you throwing it on 2nd and 3 late in the game? What are you doing?
What are you
Doesn't
doing?
make any sense. What are you doing?
No.
So I don't know.
It seemed, it showed the flaw of the Shanahan coaching that is that giving up, but it showed a lot of flaws in the Cowboys where just everything shined through, where you're just like, it's not a 1 or 2. Like you can look at that Longhorns team right now and you look at what their issues, and like, these are all fixable issues. It doesn't feel like anything is so systemic and there's not so many of them glaring across the board. Like you just got to shore up a couple things, and all of a sudden you're winning games by 3 or 4 touchdowns as opposed to a 3-point win. That's how it's just that, a couple things. Whereas this Cowboys team, even though you only lost by 6 points, it felt like that divide was way more because you didn't have a running game. You really couldn't get any of your other receivers really involved in it. Tolbert he had that one game where he came in as a number 2 and he hasn't been there. I know you get Brandon Cooks back. That helps, but you just need a little bit more depth in an NFL season. They don't have that. Ferguson's playing well, but not well enough to be a real number 2 option. Basically, no one's alleviating pressure from CeeDee Lamb. And that's what you need somebody else to force a defense. That's why wide receivers, even though there's so many of them, are so valuable, is because teams are asking for 2 to 3 of them now to try and alleviate pressure and get somebody open. And the Cowboys have 2, and one of them's hurt right now. And so Tolbert's okay. So you have that problem going on. Your O-line has some issues as well. They're allowing some pressure onto Dak. Dak plays well at points, but still throws too many interceptions.
Yeah, he does.
He's forcing the ball into places where he doesn't need to be forcing it. Even that Turpin throw at the end that Turpin should have caught. I don't know why you're throwing a fade to the sideline on a third that you got to have in a 3rd and 10 when you're in 4-down territory into double coverage. I don't know why that's the pass. And it's a great pass. It's a great throw. It should have been caught. But at the same point, I don't know why that's the option.
Agreed.
And so it's just things like that on that side. Special teams, you run a fake reverse over and over again. You've run it all season, a fake reverse. And then you finally say, we're saving this for San Francisco. We're going to do it. And you throw it forward. You throw it forward. This is Pop Warner football stuff you don't do. And you do that. You have an illegal formation. So you're just starting with bad field position because of your special teams. You're not able to get going downhill. And in reality, the reason your special teams doesn't look as bad is because you have a decent punter and a really good kicker. So your special teams doesn't show the glaring lack of coaching that seems to be going on in your special teams. And your defense, I get you are beat up extremely badly on this defensive line. I get that, you can't blame everything on that. But you have to find other ways around that to try and make the scheme open. And it was basically the scheme of what Vanderbilt did to Texas, which is we're just going to try and blitz you a lot and hopefully it'll work. And it did late on but it also allowed them to just find George Kittle over and over again and put him on safeties and one-on-ones, and he could dominate that over and over again. You need to help out a little bit more with George Kittle, but you were blitzing more and not able to do that as much. Just everything about it wasn't complimentary football, and no one's complimenting each other. It's not like one side is slightly letting them down. Every field of it, everyone is not complimenting each other. And that goes back to Mike McCarthy, which is this needs to be your team, which means you need to be in the war room when they're drafting and making actual player personnel decisions to who you need. You need to go to Jerry Jones and tell him you need more players. You need to be able to go to the defense and go to Mike Zimmer and say, hey, I get you, but what I need you to do is get off the field and I need you to not allow the big plays over the top where we're just going right back out there. I need you to, on the special teams, make sure that your special teams trick plays are going to work and don't have critical flaws in them. You need to be on top of all of that. And then maybe run an offense that's a little bit more quarterback friendly to help out your guy that you paid a lot of money to. And I get you paid him a lot of money, but you want to make that a little bit more quarterback friendly for your offensive scheme in today's football. All those pieces, it just feels like he is not that guy. And he's not a bad coach, but when you're with the Cowboys, so much is required because you have to kind of step in to this world of there isn't already going to be a culture deficit because of Jerry Jones. There's already going to be a player personnel deficit because of Jerry Jones. So you have to fill some of these things, and he doesn't.
No, it's good. I agree with you 100%. It's a lot of glaring deficiencies on the roster, but now also, as you pointed out, in the coaching, at the coaching level and the front office level for the Cowboys. And I don't know if they can fix the roster issues this season. I don't right now don't see a way for them to fix them. They could just trade for some guys and maybe they will. But right now you are the second worst rush defense in the NFL and the worst rushing offense in the NFL. Those are glaring, deficiencies. Those are black holes, man, in your recipe to win. And I just don't necessarily think they can fix those this season. And I wonder how many more wins they have on the schedule with those glaring issues, with those types of issues, like dragging down the entire blueprint to win for the Cowboys.
And how much do you have to give up to try and fix those? And does that actually put you in a position to be a Super Bowl contender, or does it just make you a playoff team? Because if you're giving up 4 or 5 draft picks to be a playoff team, probably pack it up for the year and just say, let's go try our best, but we probably shouldn't leverage our future to just make the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's not guaranteed at this point that, in that division, considering where Washington is now, that you're going to get, a couple of easy wins in the division like you were before. The Giants, I think, are a pushover, but Philadelphia never is, and not this Washington team. I'm not sure that Dallas can beat this Washington team twice, and maybe you can beat them once. If you're healthy enough, but I'm not sure you can beat them twice. All right, there's some Cowboys discussion. We'll come back after the Horn headlines here, and then we'll hit the Texans a little bit. But on the other side, in Rod's rant, we'll get back to Longhorn discussion. We'll talk about the Texas Longhorns versus the Vanderbilt Commodores. I have figured out, I think, one of the trends working against Texas the last 3 weeks. And we'll talk about that too. But first, let's get updated. Let's get educated. Let's get informed with all the top stories of the day with Patrick Davis and Horn Headlines.
All right, your Horn Headlines brought to you by Top Gun Rentals and Lawn Equipment. In the NBA, the Spurs got a 109-106 win over the Rockets on Saturday. Victor Wembanyama had 29 points and held Alperen Sengun to only 6 points for the Rockets. The Mavericks dropped the game to the Suns 114-102. Luka Doncic still had 40 points in the loss, but a 31-point night for Kevin Durant got Phoenix the win. Tonight, the Rockets and Spurs face off again, and the Mavs take on the Jazz. In the World Series, the Dodgers took a 2-0 series lead with late heroics on Friday with a Freddie Freeman walk-off grand slam, then a solid 4-2 win on Saturday. The series now shifts to New York with the Yankees hoping to get back into it with Clark Schmidt on the mound going against Walker Buehler. In college football, Texas picked up a 27-24 win over Vanderbilt on the road, holding on after an underwhelming second-half performance. Ohio State survived a scare against Nebraska, winning 21-17, while Oregon maintained their number 1 ranking with a dominant 38-9 win over Illinois. And Texas A&M rode a big second half to a 38-23 win over LSU to remain the only unbeaten team in SEC play. Texas falls to number 6 in the latest AP poll. And in the NFL, the Texans picked up a big division win over the Colts after almost giving the game away on a late fumble. Joe Mixon ran for 102 yards in the game, but the Texans will wait to hear about the status of Stephon Diggs after exiting the game after a non-contact injury. And the Cowboys fell just short to the 49ers, 30-24, after fighting back in the fourth quarter. Tonight, the Giants take on the Steelers on Monday Night Football. And that's your Horn Headlines.
All right, thank you, Patrick, for the Horn Headlines. I appreciate those. A little talk here about the Texans. If you're the Texans right now, you got to feel good that you're still able to win some of these games, despite having some major issues that you have to address. Right now, pass protection is probably the biggest issue the Texans need to address. I saw this stat from Nate Tice, and actually it was hard for me to believe it, but at one point, this was like in the third, maybe it was the end of the third quarter, toward the end of the third quarter. If you go look at it, the Texans at one point CJ Stroud was being pressured on 20 of his 28 dropbacks. But I think he ended up with like 37 dropbacks. But at the end of the third quarter, by the time he got to 28 dropbacks, he had been pressured on 20 of the 28. That is a ridiculously high number. You're talking about close to 71%, something like that. It settled down a little bit. You saw that number drop and decrease and dissipate, but still, now you're talking about 2 weeks back to back where opposing teams have been able to apply pressure on CJ Stroud at a rate of 50% or higher. That's not good. And against the Colts, who are not necessarily an elite pass rushing unit, and even for the Green Bay Packers, that's a good defense, but they got over 50% pressure rate, and they only blitz 17% of the time. I got to go back and check the blitz rate of the Colts because I haven't gotten that number yet. But my point is, you got pass protection issues if you're the Texan. You got to fix those. Now, I don't know if that's schematic. I don't know if it's a development issue. I'm not sure if there's a certain concept that they can't figure out, assimilated pressure, or maybe it's overload pressures, or maybe it's a blitz of some kind. That is something I also got to go back and try to track. Either way, the big issue is your quarterback cannot be under pressure half the damn time they drop back. That's unacceptable for the Texans. So that's their big issue. They're still winning in spite of that because CJ Stroud is playing really well, and CJ Stroud had a nice bounce back performance in that game versus the Colts. So, he still looks like, CJ Stroud is a high level quarterback. So I don't know if it's all on him, and he still can operate with some of that pressure. But when you start playing, really good teams, playoff teams, you start playing teams that, are just better than you or as good as you are, because the Colts are not there. They're a bad team. I think then you could, just like against the Packers, those are games you're going to lose. Like, you're not going to be able to win those games. You'll be in those games, but you can't win those games when your quarterback is under pressure 50% of the time. And he still was great. Almost 300 yards, 285 yards passing, had a touchdown passing. He did get sacked twice. He had a 99 passer rating. So CJ Stroud wasn't bad, but you're not going to get the best out of CJ Stroud when he's constantly under pressure, when he's throwing the football. And I think when Nico Collins comes back, maybe that'll help some of that. But I still don't see how the Nico Collins, I don't see how the Nico Collins factor will help their pass protection as much. I think that having Joe Mixon be able to run the football, that helps your pass protection because it keeps you on schedule and keeps the defense from pinning their ears back because you're not just one-dimensional. Remember, early in the season, they were very one-dimensional. You're talking about 75% of their yards were coming, via the pass because they just couldn't run the football. Now you can run the football, so you have more balance. That's going to help out. But you got to figure out what's going on with pass protection. You're way too talented. You've drafted O-linemen with high draft capital, and you've paid a lot of money because guys like Laramie Tunsil investing in that O-line. There's no reason it should be performing at this level. The O-line should be a strength on this team, and I think it can be and it has been, but not consistently. Right now, it's a liability in pass protection. You got to figure that out. But first world problems for the Texans because they're still winning. Right? You're still 6-2, and this is an issue that I brought up after the first time you played the Colts. I was like, the offensive line looks leaky. It shouldn't be that leaky. And they've been leaky all season long, yet you're still 6-2. That's what having a true franchise quarterback will do for you.
Yeah.
And your defense. Defense is legit. Matter of fact, speaking of pressure rates, you applied pressure 60% of the time against Anthony Richardson. He was under pressure 60% of his dropbacks. That is crazy. And most of it was Danielle Hunter, generating a team high 12 pressures on 33 pass rushes, second most pressures in a game this season, and the highest pressure rate this season for Danielle Hunter. So the Texans, that on the flip side, they can apply pressure at an elite level defensively. So that's a really good sign. But offensively, they got to do a better job of protecting CJ Stroud. And they got to do a better job of being able to neutralize the pressure that teams are putting on. That's 60% pressure rate, by the way, tied for the highest rate in a game this season. Seems pretty high. But still, even 50% is really, really high for the Texans to be allowing 50% pressure rate the last two games. All right, we come back. We'll get into some Texas conversation. I figured out a trend the last 3 weeks, and maybe you've seen it too. The last 3 weeks with this Texas offense and what they faced, and it may be one of the biggest reasons for the regression in productivity and maybe in some of the regression we've seen from Quinn Ewers and the offense overall. We'll talk about that when we get into Rod's rant on the other side, right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Longhorn. Rod Babers coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Time to get into some Texas football conversation. Get back to some Texas football conversation. And so I know a lot of Longhorn fans somewhat stressed about the way the offense is trending. Texas defense right now still one of the best in the country. They're first, second, and third in total scoring and pass defense. So not a lot to complain about when you're talking about this Texas defense. But the Texas offense, Longhorn fans have been somewhat stressed out. And it's really been the last 3 games for Texas, Oklahoma, then the Georgia game offensively, and even the Vanderbilt game. Even though I thought Quinn Ewers had a nice bounce back performance, there were some Longhorn fans still concerned about the passing game and pass protection, the lack of verticality in the passing game, the lack of a formidable run game, all of those different things. I've noticed a trend too, and it's something that might might give you somewhat of an explanation as to why we've seen regression in a lot of different areas on offense, right? You want to just say, oh man, it was Quinn's fault because Quinn regressed. Well, Quinn did have I think, lingering effects from the injury, and that was noticeable regression, I should say, in the Georgia game, and of course in the Oklahoma game early on. But I like this bounce back performance versus Vanderbilt. So I think Quinn was more part of the solution versus Vanderbilt than he was the problem. And I know some people are like, well, he didn't handle pressure well. Yeah, I mean, but he wasn't perfect. But I still think he had one of the better games we've seen from Quinn. And if he was 17 or 17 at one point, it's a pretty damn good game. But the running game still left a lot to be desired. Pass protection is a major issue for you now. 11 sacks in the last 2 weeks. So I went back and I started thinking about it. What could be going on, right? Is this something deeper than just because Sark doesn't seem concerned that Quinn's regression is going to derail the offense. He doesn't seem concerned about it. He even said in the post game that if Quinn plays like he played versus Vandy, they're going to be just fine. They can accomplish all their goals with him playing like that. And by the way, that is kind of how Quinn has played, right? He's efficient. He's on time, in a rhythm, and he's excellent. Brilliant in the short to intermediate game, and he's always struggled on the deep passes. And I love how all of a sudden, yes, he got better throwing the deep ball last season. He got better throwing the deep ball at the beginning of this season. But Quinn's never been a great deep ball passer. He's never been a great vertical passer in terms of throwing, shots down the field. He's always been magnificent in ball placement, accuracy, layering of the football, and touch of the football in the short to intermediate area. Matter of fact, I don't think there's a quarterback that's better in college football, in my opinion. With throwing the ball short to intermediate, he is great. So I don't think he's ever been there. So some Longhorn fans want that. I don't think that's necessarily what's limiting the offense either. But yes, there's no doubt that the offense is not as explosive and not as prolific, and it doesn't seem to have the same rhythm to it. I think right now what they're lacking is kind of the identity of the offense, right? We thought the identity would be the passing game. They would funnel everything through Quinn, third-year starting quarterback, and basically they would start the game with the pass, open up with the pass, I should say, and then have the running game complement that, right? So have the passing game open up the run game for you. And now with the pass protection issues and Quinn's inconsistency, I'm not sure if Sark wants to operate that way either. So I think Sark is a little bit torn about what he wants the identity of the offense to be. And he's had to pivot a couple of times this season. You had to pivot when Cedric Baxter got hurt. I think that changed what you envisioned for the offense. I think when Quinn got hurt, you had to change it again. I think when Quinn came back and was inconsistent, Sark probably started to pivot again. And after now watching the pass protection issues, you're probably thinking, okay, I don't know if I want to be a heavy pass team. We got pass protection issues. And if we are going to be a pass first team, then it definitely can't be a deep vertical passing game where he's got to get through full field read progressions. We got to get the ball out quick, and it's got to be on time and on schedule. And that's why you had, the first 14 plays were either handoffs or the ball was thrown within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. You only had 9 passes past 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. So a lot of those are just long handoffs, extensions of the running game. And I think that is Sark's way of insulating the pass protection. So you don't have to worry about a full field read progression and Quinn holding on to the ball too long, or Quinn having to execute second reaction plays, or him having to improvise. So, I think ultimately that Sark's tinkering, right? He's still trying to figure out, and that's a good sign to me because you're still one of the better offenses in the country, and yet I don't think you have formulated or cemented your identity. Remember I said last week, I think Vanderbilt's identity on offense is, in my opinion, is more stabilized, and it is something that is more distinct, and I think it's something that they have cemented, right? More so than Texas' identity, because Texas had to flip and change their identity a lot. And one of the things I think that's hurting Texas' ability to really formulate an identity and to be, focused on a specific identity is the last 3 games they faced defensive head coaches. Now, one of the things that I saw that I don't even know why I started looking at this trend, but the first 5 coaches that they played, the first 5 head coaches were all offensive head coaches. They were all offensive guys. in the last 3 games, you've played all defensive coaches. All right, Clark Lee, defensive head coaches. Clark Lee, Brent Venables, and Kirby Smart. And they're some of the best. And one of my takes, an old take that I've had about offensive head coaches and defensive head coaches at the college and the pro level. If you are a defensive head coach at the NFL or the college level, your resume has to be stellar, spectacular, extraordinary. It just does. Usually it takes a defensive head coach, and not it's like there are exceptions to the rule, but most of the time you'd have to be someone who is considered to be the most elite, right, in their craft, or most elite on their level, and you have to have done it for some time. Like there has to have been some longevity to that run. Offensively, most of the time, you can have someone who just had a really fast rise through the coaching ranks. It can be somebody with a really innovative offense for the last couple of years, and that guy will get the benefit of the doubt and get a head coaching opportunity a lot of times over a defensive guy, defensive coordinator, defensive mind, who also has a similar resume. So they're both kind of flashes in the pan, right? They haven't necessarily established themselves for a long time. The offensive guy will get the benefit of the doubt that he will get the head coaching job over the defensive guy who has not been established a long time. Most defensive guys, like I said, you got to have a stellar resume that is extraordinary in a number of different ways. But offensively, hey, man, they'll take the next big thing offensively.
I was
have it time and time again.
pointing that out.
So,
Billy Napier was Alabama wide receivers coach from 2013 to 2016. He's an Arizona State quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator for just 2017. Then he got the head coaching job at Louisiana. Then he got the head coaching job at Florida.
There you go. Exactly. Right.
He called plays for 1 year.
Pretty much. Yeah. And then we saw the McVay coaching tree is a primary example of that too. It's like, no. Get that guy. Get the guy. Say, did he ever call plays? I don't know. It's just get him. He's from that coaching tree. It's just offensively, give them the benefit of the doubt. Defensively, we want you to prove it over a long period of time. Got to be tried, true, and tested. But anyway, my point is those defensive coordinators that become head coaches, they're among the best defensive minds in all of football. They really are. The offensive coaches that Sark has to match wits with and win a chess match with, they're okay. I mean, they're all right. They're not guaranteed to be elite minds offensively. They were probably the flash in the pan at the time, or they're respectable. But defensively, Venables, Kirby Smart, Clark Lee, go look at the resumes. Long, tried, and true. And so they speak the same language as well, these defensive coaches. So what we've noticed is that Kirby Smart took a little bit of what Venables did, the disguise and the pre-snap manipulation. And then Clark Lee took a little bit of what Kirby Smart did, the cornerback blitz, the A-gap blitz, the delayed blitz. And those Diesel's defensive-minded coaches who all speak the same language, they were able to decipher and siphon lots of different things from those previous game plans. And when Sark was able to, he just basically was able to outwit and outmaneuver the offensive coaches, because he's an offensive coach. He knows how they think. He knows how they operate. He knows what they're trying to achieve. In those first 5 games, he was basically able to be a chess master against those coaches. But not as much of a chess master against the defensive coaches, because they're matching up with him. They're the same conceptual signatures I bring up that I talk about all the time. They're tracking those just like I am. And they're like, well, he starts the game off. He's a pass first guy. Well, when he passes, he's not passing deep down the field. Everything's within 5 to 8 yards. Okay, 5 to 8 yards. All right, then let's make sure that we are jumping those routes. Let's make sure that we are suffocating those routes. Let's manipulate the safeties, because Quinn, if you give him a different picture pre-snap and post-snap, then he struggles with that. So they're all just picking up where the other defensive coordinator left off. So if anything, that makes me a little bit more paranoid about maybe the A&M game with Mike Elko and maybe the Kentucky game with Mark Stoops as head coaches, but not necessarily the Billy Napier and the Sam Pittman games. Now, Arkansas might just be a problem because that's a rival and you got to go there. But I think Sark has done a really good job this year of being able to win the chess match with the OCs, the offensive-minded head coaches, but not the defensive-minded head coaches. And will that be a problem potentially going forward? It could be. It could be. Remember, my thing in the offseason was I need Sark to become a chess master. I need him to become a true chess master. And I think he has been, trending toward being a true chess master, but he got out-coached by Kirby Smart. And in the last 3 weeks, so let me give you these stats before we go to the break here. So last 3 weeks against defensive head coaches, Let's go with what your rank is in these specific categories, and then what your rank is in the last 3 weeks. Yards per attempt. You are 17th in yards per attempt. Not bad at all. But last 3 weeks against defensive-minded head coaches, you are 105th in yards per attempt. In yards per completion, you were 53rd. That's a little bit above average, so nothing wrong with that. That's where you are on the season. But in the last 3 games against defensive head coaches, you are 127th in yards per completion. Your sack percentage allowed, you're 61st. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's average. But in the last 3 weeks against defensive head coaches, you've allowed 12 sacks out of your 17 last 3 weeks. You're 109th in sack percentage allowed against defensive head coaches. Rushing yards per game, 61st. Nothing wrong with that. No shame in that. That's average. But in the last 3 weeks against defensive head coaches, you go from 61st to 110th in rushing yards per game. Yards per rush, 58th. A little bit above average. Nothing to sneeze at. But in the last 3 weeks, 99th in yards per rush. Yards per play, you are 22nd in yards per play. Damn good. But in the last 3 weeks against defensive head coaches, 103rd in yards per play. He's still winning games, but it's clear that the offense is not the same. And even Sark, as a play caller, that he is not the same when he's going up against a defensive chess master. He's an offensive chess master, but when you go up against a defensive chess master, I need you to be able to win those. And although, yes, he is still 2-1 in those games, you can make the argument that his offense is losing ground, is regressing, and that the offense against those defensive-minded head coaches, that it is performing at a subpar level. Because that I'm just giving you the numbers. The last 3 weeks, very different offense. The last 3 weeks. Last 3 weeks, you're in triple digits in a lot of major offensive categories going up against defensive head coaches. When, if you're looking at the stats, it would say, oh, Texas offense is top 20 offense in the country. Yeah, but the last 3 weeks. And that's a big but right there. Kim Kardashian, Nicki Minaj, Rita Sauce, Cardi B Sauce, Megan Thee Stallion Sauce. But we come back. We'll wrap it up, put it in the oven, and we'll let you know what's coming up. But also, we'll play Who Said That? That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world. And based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify and recall who said that. We'll play that next when we come back right here on the Rodcast featuring Patrick Davis. I'm Lifetime Local, and Rod Baby's coming back on the horn. All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. It is a Smooth Soul Monday edition of the Rodcast. That's when Patrick plays jams intended to soothe the tortured soul of sports fans who may have had a tough weekend. Also, to ease you in to the work week from hopefully a stress-free, fun-filled, relaxing weekend to the very hectic and very stressful work week. He wants to try to make that a smooth transition, thus the purpose of a Smooth Soul Monday. Also, he comes up with the topic for the big fat poll of the day. We appreciate Patrick hooking us up there. The topic for the big fat poll of the day is a simple one. Who was the MVP for the Texas win over Vanderbilt? And 46% of you who were surveyed say it was Taft Daddy, Michael Taft, with 1 interception, 1 forced fumble, had a pass broken up, had 6 tackles, played like a man on a mission. Second, DeAndre Moore. 28% of you who voted in that poll said DeAndre Moore was the MVP after a 2-touchdown, nearly 100-yard performance from DeAndre Moore. All right, time to play Who Said That? That's when Patrick plays pieces of audio from the sports world, sometimes beyond the sports world, and based on the context clues or familiarity of the voice, you have to identify and recall who said that.
Opportunities once in a lifetime. And with those opportunities, we have to make the most of it. Every one of us have an individual responsibility to go out there and fight for each other. Represent the names on your back, represents the names that's on your helmet. Well, we don't got no decal. So represent the names, all right? One play at a time, all right? Together. All right, here we go. 703, 1, 2, 3, 7, let's get it.
I love Jameis Winston. I do. Oh, we ain't got no decals. He's so funny. I don't know if I really want to know if he's trying to be funny or if it's just the way he is.
Oh,
It is
represent
so
the
good.
name on your jerseys and represent the name on your helmets. Oh, we don't got no decals, but represent the Browns.
I mean, it is such. I mean, it is. I mean, I gotta say, he is comedy gold.
And if
man.
y'all missed that, he threw for 334 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game, and they beat
What
the
the-
Ravens.
The Ravens, the team we were just talking about, they may challenge Kansas City.
Yeah.
They got famous Jameis out here beating them. That's crazy. I always say this about Jameis. His game, he's like an idiot savant. Like he can have a game like that against the Ravens, and he can play the Browns
He's
next
on
week.
the Browns.
Yeah, well, sorry. He on the Browns. Yeah, he can play the Panthers. So I'm thinking about a bad team. He can play the Panthers and throw 4 picks versus the Panthers. So, yeah, he can't play the Browns. They're too bad. And he's on them, but he's making them better. Man, that's crazy. That's wild. All right, thank you for everything you do, Patrick. Good stuff there. Remember, folks, the revolution will not be televised. We'll talk about it right here on the Rodcast. Remember, we love you guys. We mean that. Take care of yourselves, but more importantly, take care of each other. Until next time, hook 'em and peace.